gotta take your get started.
I'm calling to order the Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013 meeting of the Township of South Orange Village Board of Adjustment. May we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Don. Mr. DeScala.
Here.
Mr. Groman. Mr. Polipiano.
Here.
Mr. Reeves.
Here.
Mr. Semper. Mr. Aller.
Here.
Mr. Shapiro.
Here.
And Ms. Waring.
Here.
Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, PL 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by publishing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 in the December 2012 edition of the South Orange Maplewood News Record, and by filing said notice in the office of the village clerk. Okay, just wanted to let everybody know this evening that we have a full agenda, and we're going to try to move expeditiously as we always do, but particularly so tonight. Also, we may have one more board member show up, I'm hoping, momentarily, and we will duly make that notice of that on the record. So the first order of business is the approval of minutes for our meeting held on Tuesday, March 5th, 2013. Do you have any comments about the minutes? I think there were a few comments.
Yeah, I saw the minutes and made minor modifications. I think that they're fine as is.
And we have those here. I likewise saw them, and I saw I didn't make any additional changes. I thought that they were fine with these minor changes. They accurately reflected what took place in the meeting. I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Ed Semper has arrived. Do we have other comments about the minutes? May we have a motion?
Move.
Move to accept the minutes as amended?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. DeScala.
Yes.
Mr. Polipiano.
Yes.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
Mr. Semper.
Yes.
Mr. Aller.
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro.
Yes.
And Ms. Waring.
Abstain.
Next is the approval of resolution. This is the one that was decided March 5th. This is the Edward Vikrov Group Gas LLC on 252 Irvington Avenue. This is our resolution prepared by our attorney, Mr. Dwyer. And this was sent to y'all. Do we have comments or questions about this? I think we had one question we had, Mr. Dwyer, about, you put in something here, we were maybe, okay, 21. This finding shall only apply to the facts presented and evidence adduced at this time, and in the event further facts are presented, the board reserves the right to amend this determination. Is this standard in all of ours?
No, Mr. Chairman, that's, as a result, there was a discussion about the ordinance and the history of the ordinance, and there was some question about whether or not the ordinances prior to this non-conforming use had allowed it or not. And in recognition of that, I had added this language to the extent that if those old ordinances which had not been located are found, the board may want to have another look at this.
Is there a time frame in which somebody could generate an objection? Because if the board moves forward with this resolution and approves it, the applicant is going to move forward with the use of the site as previously approved. Once he gets going and the use is active, at that point, it would be appropriate for somebody to come back and say, wait a second, stop, and would the board then have a...
That's a fair point, and I would say that, given the nature of the prerogative writ actions, maybe it's a 45-day limit.
Okay, so if within 45 days there's no further evidence brought
Right.
forward, then there's no question, okay.
Okay.
And I also suggest, Mr. Chairman, that be changed to these findings as opposed to this finding.
Okay. So we could approve this resolution, and you're saying if there was new evidence that came up about the ordinances 45 days from approval, that we could change our mind, possibly.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to leave the opportunity for the board. I know the board was at that time of the application trying to determine exactly what the state of the ordinance history was. And it hadn't been able to determine it with real degree of finality.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions?
There's a typo that I will give to the secretary. Otherwise, I think it's a good resolution.
May we have a motion?
I move that we approve the resolution with the changes we just discussed.
Want a second? Somebody want to second that?
Wasn't here for me.
Yes, I'll second.
And the typo, Mr. Parliano?
Yeah, I'll hand it to you now.
Don't we have to,
I thought he was
We're
gonna-
waiting.
Thank you. Okay, that would be paragraph 5. Changing the word on to are. Should be are. He's right.
Okay, Mr. DeScala,
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
yes.
Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Aller,
Abstain.
and Mrs. Shapiro.
Yes.
Okay, we have 3 applications for completeness and 3 full applications to be heard, in theory. We have never accomplished that amount in the decade that I've been working on this board, and I don't think we're going to start tonight. I can scroll. So what we'd like to do is, the third case, Bianca's LLC at 124 Fifth Street, we have contacted them about whether they wanted a special meeting. And that's what I'd like to resolve right now, so then we could send you all on your way, as well as anybody else here who would be waiting the whole evening. Okay?
Hello, I'm Paul Pulowski. I represent Bianca's LLC. We've requested a special meeting. We've requested that our notices be carried to the special meeting. We've been given 3 dates: Thursday, April 11th, and these were given to us by the board secretary. Monday, April 15th, Tuesday, April 23rd. We would particularly like one of the 2 earlier dates, the 11th or the 15th. Of course, it's up to the board. We're asking.
The 11th or the 15th of April?
Say that again.
What were the date? 11th or the 15th?
11th, Thursday the 11th, Monday the 15th, or Tuesday the 23rd.
Okay. Okay, so
So if we're voting, the early date is difficult for me. The 15th I can do.
The 11th and the 15th is bad for me.
I can do the 15th. What other days?
I can only do the 23rd.
The 23rd, Ed, the 23rd.
Well, actually, I could possibly get here
I could do the 23rd also.
for 7 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Then I can do the 11th as well.
I cannot do the 23rd.
This is like an LSAT question, and I'm not an attorney.
I
Bob?
can do any of the dates above.
Okay.
The 11th and the 23rd are okay. I'm not sure about the 15th. Right now I can't, but I may be able to change it.
I can do the 23rd as well. I just,
I think
I
so.
can't do the early
So far,
23rd.
what I have down is 5 of us could make the 23rd, and that so far only 3 of us have committed to the other 2 days. That's not a quorum.
I didn't hear that again.
We have 5 of us who can make it to the 23rd. Is that correct? Yes, yes. 3, 4. Okay, so there's 5, and you can do it too. So there's 6 of us. Okay, so 6 of us can do the 23rd, but I've only got 3 of us each on the 11th and the 15th, so that would not be a quorum.
That'd be hard to win that one.
Yes.
When is the next scheduled hearing?
That's the first Tuesday in May.
7th.
So, do you want to try the 23rd? Okay, we'll go with 6 on the 23rd. But we need our notices to be approved and carried.
Okay, is it going to be at 6 or 7? You said 6. We normally have these at 7.
I don't know if you meant 6.
Oh, 6
members.
members. Okay, I'm sorry. So let's do the 23rd, April 23rd, for Bianca's LLC, case 1001, at 7 p.m. This will be a special meeting. And yes, there should be no problem with carrying the notices.
You can carry his notices, we'll just put a notice for a special meeting, make notice of that. Or you can carry his notice and make an announcement that this case is carried to the 23rd, if that's the board's decision.
Yes. Yes, so we're carrying Bianca's LLC at 124 5th Street to April 23rd. Anything else to do?
I believe Mr. Scholar would like to address the board about this notice issue. He represents the neighbor. He represents the neighbor. Claims we didn't get notice.
Stephen Scholar, attorney for John Surface, adjacent property owner to the property that's subject to the application. Written to the board earlier just to advise you that my client, the immediate adjacent property owner, never received notice of this hearing. Counsel for the applicants claims that it was mailed, was never received.
Okay.
I haven't seen a signed certified receipt back. I don't know how they sent it to him, but it was never received.
We have the card that says...
We have submitted the notices and we have a copy of the certified mail receipt. And we also have from the Postal Service confirmation that it was sent. We've submitted the affidavits to the board secretary.
And you have those? Ms.
I have the
Jenny?
green receipt saying that they sent it out.
Okay.
I just request to see them.
By all means, go ahead and see them.
Thanks. Thank you.
And so now you know that it's going to be on the 23rd, so
Thank you.
that's plenty of, effectively, plenty of notice. Okay,
Understood. Thank
so you can speak with our secretary and Ms. Davis, and you can see for yourself. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Okay, and so then the first application for completeness is case 1002 LOJ Properties, 301 South Orange Avenue. Applicant seeks to convert adjoining rear office into clerical office for use in occupational therapy business. This is a variance for multiple uses, apartments in front and office to rear building. Mr. Friedland.
Good evening, Chairman Reeves. I am here solely to make sure that the completion has been completed. We never were told that this was on for completion until Friday, when I just kind of went into the office, and I was somewhat surprised that we weren't going to be on for the hearing, notwithstanding the fact that apparently we got a very full agenda. So I'm here now to make sure or assure for my client that there's no need to republish for my client to be heard on the ensuing date of May the 7th.
I think the board first has to determine whether or not the application is complete.
I'm sorry, sir?
The board has to determine whether or not the application is complete.
I understand that, yeah.
Okay, assuming we determine the application is complete, do they need to renotice?
If it's, if we notify the public right now, who are noticed to be here this evening, then he could carry it to the next meeting.
So it can be carried?
Yes.
Fine. That's why I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Fried, so you're not going to be representing for the completeness hearing?
I'm sorry?
You're not going to be here representing the applicant for the completeness hearing,
Well, I'm
though?
going to sit here and listen, so.
All right, so you're, okay, fine. All right, so let's go ahead and move on through the completeness. Ms. Gruhl, why don't you take us through this? This is, as we've done before, I think it works fairly efficiently if we go through your review, and if we have questions, we can move through rather quickly if we don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. I believe that all the board members have a copy of our completeness review dated March 26th of this year. To summarize, we recommend that this application deemed conditionally complete, and that the applicant should submit the remaining required materials at least 10 days prior to the scheduled public hearing. There are a number of waivers that we think are reasonable in terms of completeness, and we would recommend the board that it's reasonable to grant the waiver for completeness. However, our last page summarizes the information that we believe should be submitted at least 10 days prior to the scheduled hearing. And just to summarize, those are color photos, parking requirement calculations for the proposed uses of the property, existing critical environmental areas, if any, existing trees on the property with a caliper of 4 inches or greater, if any, existing wells or septic systems on or within 100 feet of the property, if any, landscaping plan, location and use of all structures within 200 feet of the property, and historic district information should be noted on the plan. We have 2 other comments that if there are no critical areas, large trees, wells, septic systems, then the applicant should provide a statement confirming that. And the applicant we recommend that the applicant provide square footages, number of residential units, and number of bedrooms for the existing residential use and the proposed office use.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman? May
Hi,
I
Mr.
just make a
Friedland.
comment or two?
Thought you were sitting down.
Well, I'm standing up again now. I met with my client and our 2 expert witnesses on Friday, after having reviewed Ms. Gruhl's very comprehensive memorandum. And I represent to the board and to the municipal planner that all of the requested information will be indeed supplied within the 10-day window.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, in the past, I've gone over each item here that they requested a waiver from. I can do that again. We can do that again this evening if the board wants us to. We've had this in plenty of time to take a look at it. If you want to, we can do it. But I'm not inclined to this evening unless you all want to.
I'm fine to.
No, I had a couple of questions, maybe Sal can answer.
Okay.
That's fine, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
One is that pump house or well in Grove Park. Is that anything that would come under E, existing wells or?
No, that would be wells on the property.
Well, it says wells on or within 100 feet, and I don't know what
It's not
that's
within
about.
100 feet.
Okay. And historic district information, let's say it's in a historic district, does that impact the application at all?
It's, I don't believe it's a listed property in the application, and the historic district, and Susan can correct me if I'm wrong, it would apply to the HPC if this was a tear down or a subdivision of the property, or in which case it could be referred to the HPC. But I don't know that there's any historic concerns regarding this property.
That is, it's a new ordinance, and in terms of a certificate of appropriateness, absolutely, I agree with Sal. I guess there's a question as to what applications over and above need to go to the HPC just by virtue of the fact that it's in a district.
Yeah.
That is
And that would be,
questionable.
that would be the board's recommendation, and it wouldn't be for an action, it would only be for a recommendation from the HPC, looking for input from the HPC, if the board chose to do that. You could direct the applicant to file with the HPC, have the HPC, and the HPC has how many days, I think?
Well,
we
even in terms of that, this board, it's an advisory opinion, and
Right.
obviously Patrick can respond to that, but it doesn't, in that instance, it would not hold up the board's.
No, it was only advisory, but it was my understanding, if I'm not mistaken, that the ordinance says that if it's listed, that an application will go to the HPC for them to comment. If they can or cannot comment, it's up to them.
If it is a listed property, then absolutely, the application gets referred to the HPC for comment. It's not a listed property, so, but the board, still think, because it is in the district, the board does have the, you can
Option.
request, you have the option to request a review by the HPC.
Who sends it? Do we send it to the HPC, or does the applicant
The
send it?
board secretary.
Right, so it's not the applicant's duty to send it to the HPC.
No,
It's
if you
our-
wanted to
it's our
send it,
duty.
you would direct us and the board
Do
secretary.
we want the
to-
HPC's involvement in this case?
I don't think so. I don't think so, for me.
Okay. I don't think so. No? Okay, so we're not going to have the HPC involved in this case. All right, any other comments on these items here? Okay, so can we have a motion to deem it complete with these
Conditionally
items?
complete, yeah.
Conditioned upon these items in the higher Gruel review that Mr. Friedland stipulated to. I just made the motion.
I
Okay,
second.
so, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Descala,
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Aller, Mrs. Shapiro,
Yes.
and Ms. Werner.
Yes.
Okay. So next item, the next case for completeness is case 1003 Seton Hall University. Oh, should we say that that case will be heard, at least it's scheduled for hearing on,
Jerry,
and that case is scheduled for hearing in May.
As I understood, reading today's agenda, we should be at least number 2 on the agenda.
Mike?
Thank you.
That you will be heard. You will be heard after any of the current applications. If they're carried to those meetings, you will be heard after them. And so we've got 3 for tonight, depending upon how many of those are done. Obviously, Bianca's LLC is going to the next meeting. If we get through with the other 2 this evening, then you'll be second.
Very well, thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on to Seton Hall.
No further notice, Mr. Chairman?
No further notice. Okay, Seton Hall University, 400 South Orange Avenue, preliminary and final site plan and variances, C&D, expansion of the parking deck off the southwest corner of the existing parking deck. Do we have anybody representing Seton Hall this evening? No? Okay. So, let's go. I thought I had. Oh boy, here it is. Okay, so again, we have the nice review from Higher Gruel, dated March 26, 2013 on this application. Ms. Gruel, you want to take us through a summary of
Oh, sure.
what you all recommend?
I would be happy to. And I should note that we coordinated with your engineering consultant, Omland, to make sure that we had received their comments as well. so that we were asking for the same information for purposes of completeness. And in this, again, we request or we recommend that the application be deemed conditionally complete for hearing before the board, subject to the granting of submission waivers, and that the remaining required information be submitted at least 10 days prior to the scheduled public hearing. And again, at the end of our memo, in terms of summary, we recommend that color photographs, a landscaping plan, and a revised lighting plan are submitted at least 10 days prior to the public hearing, and that the applicant should provide testimony in support of the requested waivers, but the applicant is not here. So.
Okay, do members of the board have any questions about?
The applicant's attorney has just arrived.
Yes.
Nicole Lurie, on behalf of the applicant, Seton Hall University. I apologize for being late.
We just began your completeness hearing. Is there anything that you wanted to say?
There were 3 items that were listed in the completeness report that the planner had asked for in advance of the hearing date, and the university has no problem providing those, with the exception of the landscaping plan. There really is not much landscaping. There will be some mulching and grass, and those items have already been listed on one of the plans, so we are requesting a waiver for that item.
Well, I guess what you're saying actually is that the landscaping plan is already provided, it's just minimal landscaping.
Okay.
And that's how I'm reading it. You have proposed landscaping, right? It's just that it's grass.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so it's already there. Is it, Ms. Gruhl, is that consistent that it's minimal landscaping, so?
This is only for completeness. The substantive comments with respect to that would come at a subsequent time.
Okay. All right. Do we have other questions, Mr. Adler?
I had a question on 53, the circulation plans that I guess we already have. Are those internal circulation plans within the university zone, or does that include outside of the zone? And
okay, so this is the applicant. This is item 53. This is a question I had actually also. The applicant has not provided a circulation plan with all of the required information. And the comment from Higher Gruhl is, we take no exception to the granting of this waiver. The applicant has submitted circulation plans as part of prior applications. Well, we're supposed to look at prior applications?
I would recommend that the applicant be prepared to provide at least a copy of the approved master plan for the university, which they are required to present to the planning board on a regular basis. And I believe that master plan would address any circulation issues in this area.
And I believe also with respect to your applications in front of the planning board, and this I believe came from your engineering consultant, that there was a circulation plan that was submitted with the other applications, correct?
Correct, so that's true. And we can certainly provide a copy of the master plan.
And the circulation plan we're not suggesting that a new circulation plan has been submitted. If there's already a circulation plan that was prepared for the planning board applications, but just that for your purposes, maybe this board needs that as well for their review.
And I believe some information was provided. There will be some minor restriping in conjunction with this application, I believe.
Right, that was provided. So we're talking about an internal circulation only? Given the nature of the site?
That's basically what I believe is what was submitted.
I mean, it's self-contained.
Yes, there's no off-track improvements. They're not changing
No.
any roadways or anything adjacent to the campus. It's strictly within the campus.
And I believe that the Omland engineers felt that they had sufficient information for this application in terms of completeness, as long as the circulation plan was submitted that had been previously submitted for other applications.
So what you're saying is that
Wouldn't there be a different circulation plan if you're adding on to an existing parking deck that shows how the cars travel around the deck? Is that what?
Well, I think by the plan for the parking deck itself obviously would show how the internal circulation within the parking deck is. The question is entering the parking deck, exiting the parking deck, circulation around the parking deck.
Within the university.
Within the university site. And I think, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the concern that Omlin had was that the board should have that information as well. Since it wasn't included in this set, you haven't seen an overall circulation plan to see how the new parking deck and the addition to the parking deck is going to work with that existing circulation plan and see how that works. And I think it's mainly for informational purposes. It's not, the board wouldn't be approving a circulation plan or anything like that. It's really for information so that when you hear the application, you have that information on how it all works and how the new deck fits in.
Exactly.
So then they do need to, so the circulation plan may change, like Mr. Dwyer was saying, as a result of this new parking deck addition. So maybe they have a new circulation plan, and even if they don't, we don't have it, even if it's been part of prior applications. How are we going to get it?
The applicant would have to provide you the circulation plan. That's why they're recommending that the circulation plan be provided to the board ahead of the meeting, so that you have it to review as part of the overall application, so you can see how the deck fits in with the prior approved circulation plan.
Is the applicant taking issue to that? Is that something that?
It's my understanding that information was provided with the master plan. Is that what you're referring to?
I believe it was with the master,
Okay. I don't believe there's a separate circulation plan, but I believe, we can certainly provide a copy of the master plan to the board, and if there isn't enough information in there, we'll work with the board.
The board will ask you for it.
Okay, we will provide it in advance of the floor, and we'll work with the board's planner and engineer if there's any additional information.
Yeah, I would
that they
suggest
need.
you reach out to the engineer with the master plan, provide them with the plan as soon as possible, and if the consultant is okay with that as the circulation plan for the board, then we move forward with that. And then, but if there's any revisions or changes, then that would obviously have to be noted.
Certainly.
Okay, so then that's added to your recommendation here.
It's,
Number 3
yes.
would be the master plan, which has embedded in it the circulation plan. Right?
Correct, yes, I believe so.
Any other questions? Okay, may we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve application 1003 for completeness, subject to the recommendations from the planner and the submission of the master plan and circulation plan as discussed.
Thank you. May we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for being late. I had the wrong start time, so thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Descala?
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes?
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Semper?
Yes.
Mr. Aller?
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes.
And Ms. Waring?
Yes.
Moving along, we now have case 1004. This is at 7 Fairview, or the company is 7 Fairview LLC. This is 310, 318 South Orange Avenue. Minor site plan and D variance. The applicant seeks a use variant to permit mixed-use development to continue, albeit with retail and/or children's daycare use on the first floor, with residential apartment use to continue on the second floor. Okay, so let's get that stuff out. Everybody have that? You ready to go? Mr. DeScala, you ready to go? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, good evening. My name is Rob Simon. I'm an attorney with Herald Law, attorney for the applicant. We have reviewed Hire Gruel's completeness memo dated March 26, 2013, and generally we take no issue with it. The only comment I have is the suggestion or recommendation that the application not be bifurcated and that both site plan and variance be reviewed concurrently. As you all know from being on a Board of Adjustment, certainly an applicant has the right under the Municipal Land Use Law 4055D 76B to request that an application be bifurcated. In other words, dealing with the use portion of the application first, and then the site plan portion of the application should the use variance be ultimately granted. We also know that under the Municipal Land Use Law, you basically have to supply your proofs twice, so that even though a use variance may be approved, that doesn't end the day in terms of your burden of proof with regard to the negative criteria for the second phase or the site plan phase. So in other words, that even if the applicant proves for a use variance application the negative criteria that the application be granted without substantial detriment to the public good in the neighborhood, that applicant for the second phase, provided the application is granted, still has to meet that burden of proof for the negative criteria when reviewing the site plan portion of the application. And I've actually talked to Ms. Gruel very briefly about the memo, and with regard to some of the items that Hire Gruel calls out as being needed by the board to make an informed decision as to the use portion of the application, frankly, we don't take issue with. We certainly, I've talked to our traffic consultant, we will be supplying, for purposes of the use portion of the application, a circulation plan. And what we also do for purposes of a bifurcated application of this sort is to also provide what I call a trip generation comparison in a chart form, so that the board can make a full and informed decision as to traffic and circulation around the site, but at the same time is not required as one would for a full-blown site plan to provide a traffic impact study and volume analysis and level of service and stormwater management and things of that nature. Because respectfully, we just don't think it's warranted, certainly for purposes of a bifurcated application. Now, there are cases that talk about when a board says that, you know, the application shouldn't be bifurcated, but those are for really big applications where there's brand new development on a site. One was for a bus depot, one was for a huge church. And you know, this is an existing site. We're not making any additions to the existing building. And so I think that with a circulation plan that we will agree to submit as part of the use portion, and the trip generation comparison that we would submit as part of the use portion, and as well as, I believe, the memo requests a showing of uses within 200 feet of the site for purposes of the use variance, that also we will provide at this time now. So certainly, with those comments, we are in agreement with the Hire Gruel memo.
Did you want to say something, Ms. Gruel? Or?
Yes, if I may.
Okay.
I agree with the applicant's attorney to a point and not. I think I totally understand the issue of the effort that it would take and the expense in preparing a detailed site plan with engineering and such. However, I would suggest that at the very least that there be a concept plan. I'll use that term. There are plans, but they don't necessarily address. It's very nice of the information that you're suggesting you'll submit, which is helpful. But I think that, for example, one of the significant concerns is the drop-off and pickup of any kind of childcare facility that may be on that site. That is, in my opinion, goes to the core of the use variance application. And so for this board, in my opinion, to have sufficient information in order to evaluate that, that's some information that would be necessary. So rather than, frankly...
We agree with that, and in fact,
Okay.
just for clarification purposes, when I mentioned about the circulation plan, that was fully the intent to
Okay.
provide that information to the board at this time.
I had a question for our attorney. Is it in fact the case that it's the applicant's decision whether they want to bifurcate or not, or is that our
Yes.
decision?
They have the ability to seek only the D variance, if that's all they want to seek at this time.
Do we have an obligation or a right to advise them what we think, or is that proper? That if we think they should bifurcate, or if it doesn't matter to us, if we think it does matter?
Sure. You can always tell the applicant what you think of their application.
I think the question becomes, will the board have enough information based on the proposed use to be able to decide on the D variance, the use variance?
And Gruel's memo, I think, relies upon that as a reason for
Well-
deeming it not complete.
And to a certain extent, it's not only in the board's thinking of the board, but also the applicant. The applicant doesn't necessarily want to come in front of this board and then be told, we don't have enough information, and then start. You may do that anyway, but when you know that there's information that, in my opinion, is lacking up front. But it appears as though the applicant's attorney is suggesting that they are going to submit that information.
We fully understand that it's our burden of proof, not the board certainly, and that we need to provide you, the board, all the information that you need to make a decision on the application. And that it's because it's our burden, we want to give you all the information, that we think you certainly deserve so that you can make that decision. The only question with regard to the bifurcation is that, for example, stormwater management, just throwing it out there, that providing stormwater management calculations, we don't believe that would go to necessarily the use portion of the application. So that's just an example. But certainly anything that touches upon and affects the use and allows you to make a decision, we fully intend to provide.
Well, then let's go through maybe this one line by line, and if you could advise us on which you think go to the question of use, because in my reading, there are a bunch of things in here that were not provided that do go to the question of use. So maybe we go through and just categorize them, and then the applicant can let us know whether those will be provided. Is that okay?
Yeah, before we get there, I had another question. Is it true that because I don't think we've ever had a bifurcated application in, again, about a decade, so this is novel to me, and I suppose it's novel to everybody else on the board. They've always been a site plan as well, and this is typically, I know we've had a couple daycare centers. We've had lots of questions about the daycare center. They generate a lot of questions, particularly about drop-off and traffic and safety. So do they have to basically prove twice, or if they get a use variance, does it kind of lower
prejudice
the burden for them when they come to the site plan?
Well, it depends. Are there any variances in the site plan? Because obviously to get a D variance, they're going to need 5 votes. And there's a heavier burden of proof on a D variance than would be for any C variance that might be associated with the site plan or an as-of-right site plan, which has no variances. So the heavy lift is the D variance.
So, for example, one reason to bifurcate would be if the applicant they want to do retail use, but they don't have a retail merchant yet, so they would want to bifurcate until they get somebody. Would that be a reason for a bifurcation?
I think one of the reasons is, as Susan said, the expense of the site plan application is something they're trying to determine whether or not it's worthwhile spending that. If they don't have a D variance, they won't have to spend it.
I think it would be important that...
Is that true, Mr.? Simon?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, the Cox book that I know you got your new copy of today, because I got my new copy of it today too, talks about, you know, at length, you know, why an applicant tries to bifurcate, and it's primarily a cost issue. I mean, there's no, you know, we're not hiding behind that. I mean, you know, it's enormously expensive to have a full-blown, you know, engineering plan submitted as part of a site plan, and to go through all that expense and time, and then to find out that you know, that the board doesn't like the use and denies the use, then, you know, that's obviously a lot of money down the drain as opposed to finding out up front, but at the same time providing, and obviously going through the higher Gruel memo, all the information that you think that you reasonably need to vote or consider the use.
Okay. All right, so let's march through as Mr. Parlapiano suggested.
Oh, okay. Item number 4, the certificate that tax collector, the taxes and assessments have been paid.
Yes.
We don't have that, I'm sure that
I have
okay.
that now, actually.
Okay. Certified list of property owners within 200 feet.
We certainly will provide that way before we submit our notice, certainly to the property owners.
Not submitted a public hearing notification. That is, it should be submitted, which has to be anyway, 10 days before. So that's a reasonable waiver subject to. Has not provided any letters signed by utility companies about the utility installation. We don't have a problem with granting that waiver for completeness. Has not submitted an application form to the county planning board. It is a county road, and approval from Essex County may be required, but normally if there is an approval, it's subject to any outside approvals.
Okay.
And that would go along with the site plan approval, assuming if the application is
Correct.
bifurcated, that would go along with the site plan approval.
We would totally agree to do that, yes.
And that goes for the county health department application. That is another condition. It also is with Hudson Essex Passaic Soil Conservation District application. Again, we take no exception to those waivers because would be conditioned upon, as well as any DOT or DEP approvals. The applicant has not submitted a final site plan. That's a reasonable waiver for completeness. The applicant has not, number 19, the applicant has not submitted a traffic and parking impact assessment, and this is where we recommended that be submitted, part of the traffic generated by the proposed uses as well as parking requirements. And that, as we said before, the child care center in particular is a sensitive use as it relates to that.
And we agree with that for the reasons I stated earlier.
Number 25 did not include, bless you, block and lot information, numbers in the title block, and that should be submitted. Number 26, the address and telephone number of the record owner and applicant, that we recommend should be submitted on the cover sheet. Number 33, this is, the applicant has not submitted drawings depicting all front, side, and rear setback lines. These are existing conditions. There are no changes proposed for the existing building, so we suggest that could be a waiver. Number 36, it is related to existing trees, and we take no exception to that waiver since the site is developed and no new construction is proposed at this point. Number 37, existing wells and septic tank systems within 100 feet on or within 100 feet of the property. Again, we take no exception to that since it's no new construction is occurring. The applicant, number 38, has not submitted a landscape plan. However, we suggest that they provide information regarding landscaping, delineating all proposed exterior plantings. Number 44, that's the use and location of existing structures within 200 feet, and we recommend that that be submitted because you need that for part of your assessment of the use variance. And so we recommend that the applicant address 4, 5, 19, 25, 26, and 44 before the application is deemed complete. And that's where the number 2 is about the bifurcation. And the other is in the application forms filed by the applicant certification and owner certification sections have both been signed by one of the owners as a notary public. And we raised that for the board attorney to deal with whether that is an issue or not.
Just, Mr. Vargas, for clarification on that, one of the owners of the LLC is an attorney, and he notarized the signature of the applicant with the majority interest. So.
Right. I don't have any problem with that, Mr. Chairman.
So that's legal?
You can notarize it anyway.
Okay. All right, so then there's really no question.
Mr. Simon, all the information in the application is true, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so go ahead.
Just one question, which is some of these items about setbacks and facades, while they're not changing, they're going to be pretty significant to the question of the use of it for childcare, right? And all these circulation questions that people have been asking about, right? Do we have sufficient information now about the site to assess that or not?
We were analyzing the application as it relates to the completeness checklist. And if the board should determine that they need additional information now, and obviously you have the right during the hearing to ask for information, certainly that's reasonable, but we did our review based upon the checklist.
Right, I understand.
If there is additional information that the board feels would help move the application along, then I would suggest you recommend that now and ask the applicant if they would provide that information.
I don't know if we can necessarily decide now what we're going to need on the application.
Well, again, since the application is bifurcated, you're looking at the D variance now. Questions regarding any site improvements that may happen in the future when they come back for a site plan, if they were to put in, say, a playground or something that would affect the parking lot or the circulation or anything like that, that would be part of a site plan application.
I tend to disagree, because that is going to go to use for sure. And whether it needs to be engineered, that's the issue. But I believe that what you raised, Sal, as normally site plan issues are really
Right, because
very
the question of approving the use of this use gets to the question of, does the site support the use?
Exactly.
And the site as it is may or may not, but they may have proposed changes to the site that support the use.
Right.
Well, and especially true for D variance, because part of the application, part of the proofs for D variance, or the positive criteria for D variance, is to show that the site is particularly well suited for that use. So there are a lot of site issues which are naturally incumbent upon the D variance applicant.
Right. So if I can just comment upon that, and what Susan commented, I guess, in terms of a concept plan, we fully intend to provide that. I mean, we have to, in terms of site suitability, as Mr. Dwyer appropriately stated, have to walk you through the site and talk about the use as it relates to the site. I mean, that is our burden of proof, no doubt, and we intend to provide that information. But there's a difference between providing that, which we fully intend to do, and things like, stormwater calculations and, lighting, I mean, things that are, purely what we view as site plan. And again, I can't emphasize it enough, that the law is clear that when an applicant who is granted an approval for use variance comes back on a bifurcated application for site plan approval, the applicant's burden is still to prove the negative criteria again the second time, namely that the site is not detrimental to the public good in the neighborhood, etc. So the board, in essence, by doing this, really gets 2 bites at the apple. And there's some cases where, they say fine as to the use variance, and then they ultimately deny the site plan under that second bite of the apple. And that's the risk that the applicant always takes in these types of bifurcated applications. Unfortunately, because of the cost issues, that's what we're left with at this point.
Okay, so bifurcation is the applicant's prerogative. So that's not going to impinge upon our decision whether to deem it complete or not. So let's look then at item number 1 upon the planning comments. They address 4, 5, 19, 25, 26, and 44 before the application be deemed complete. Now, I suppose we could grant them the waiver and say, present this at the hearing, but these are a lot of items that are missing.
Could I ask for it 10 days in advance, Mr. Chairman, conditional complete?
What do you all think?
I'm comfortable with 10 days in advance. I mean, I'm not going to look at it before 10 days in advance, so I'm comfortable with it.
We have other comments? I personally would like to see all this before we deem it complete. There's a lot of items missing, and we let a lot of stuff slide. This is a little bit too much for my taste to let all this wait. Most applicants, when they come before the board, this is all here, and we're not having to ask for the simple sort of stuff. But I want to hear what the rest of the board says. So we can either say it's not complete, or we can say, like Mr. Dwyer, Mr. Piano said, conditionally complete upon getting it 10 days in advance. What do y'all want to do?
I'm okay with conditional reach.
Those are in effect the same thing, right? It's complete or it's conditionally complete, right? So I'm okay with either of those. I think that the conditional is better because it forces the issue that you're talking about,
Oh, well, they certainly have to submit these in advance. There's no question about that. It's just whether we want to say it's just not complete, come back for another completeness hearing, or we say it's conditionally complete and trust that it will be here 10 days in advance.
No, we're not trusting. We would verify. If it's not here, they're not on the agenda.
It's either here or not.
Mr. Chairman, can I make maybe a suggestion, kind of a middle ground, which just for consideration, is that we would submit this information, 20 days, to your professionals, to hire Gruhl and to Omlin, and if it turns out that upon submitting it 20 days prior, that they still have some issues with regard to what we've submitted, we would hold off and not, submit notice for a hearing or even get a scheduled hearing date. I'm saying just to give you an extra layer of comfort, if that's something that
Does that sound reasonable?
you tend to.
Whatever the board determines is fine.
So 20 days in advance? Mr. Adler?
That's okay.
Okay. So then they would need to, we're looking at items 4, 5, 19, 25, 26. They're going to bifurcate. And so can somebody do a motion here? Do I have to carry everybody's water here?
I move we deem this application provisionally complete, dependent on supplying information for 4, 5, 19, 25, 26, and paragraphs 44, at least 20 days before the hearing date, and that our professionals have a chance to review that material and review it and let the board know that they found it acceptable.
But there is something else. What happens if they don't find it acceptable? Then what?
When it's not complete.
Then it's not complete.
Ultimately, it's the board's decision to determine if it's acceptable.
The board always has the final say on the completeness, but usually follows the recommendations of the professionals.
My suggestion, I'm sorry I'm interrupting, my suggestion was really so that if the professionals take issue with something that we're submitting, that they would presumably contact us, and we obviously would make it right. And even if that means that we wouldn't be able to notice for a hearing yet until we make it right, we're fine with that. So it's what we're looking for is, I guess, provisional or conditional completeness with the understanding that we want to satisfy the professional circle.
Okay, so it would have to be to them 20 days, and it would have to be to us within 10 days before the application. So that gives everybody plenty of time for them to review it, to get back to you, and for us to be all here, these items that we asked for, 10 days in advance of the hearing, so we can take a look at it. That's what we're asking for.
It is.
Yes.
Shall I?
Yes.
Make a motion?
Yes.
So I'm going to move that we accept this application as provisionally complete, subject to items 4, 5, 19, 25, 26, and 44, with that material being delivered to our professionals at least 20 days before the hearing date, and any issues being resolved such that the board can receive complete material within 10 days of the hearing date.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wait, we need a second.
Second? I'll second.
Okay, Mr. DeScala,
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves. Yes. Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Adler.
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro.
Yes.
And Ms. Werner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we move on to the full applications for this evening. The first application we're hearing is case 999, Garden State Property Management, 175 Tishner Avenue, variance. Applicant seeking to construct a two-family house on the property after demolition of the existing one-family house, detached garage, and shed on the property presently. Okay, does everybody have your materials?
Yes.
Sal? You ready? Okay. All right, we're ready to go.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Board. My name is Greg Rao. I'm a member and also an attorney for Garden State Property Management. We're here on variance application. We had a detailed hearing February 5th for completeness. As you may know, we were scheduled for March 5th. Unfortunately, the paper forgot to publish our ad, so we thank you for taking us on this meeting. And we're here for two variances. One is a design waiver for a curb cut, and the other is a bulk variance for front steps that are encroaching on the setback. Just by way of brief history, I know you have a packed agenda tonight. Currently, there's a single-family home on the property. It was built approximately late 1800s. It's functionally obsolete. It hasn't been occupied in 4 or 5 years and basically falling apart. We had purchased this property middle of last year, at which time we were moving forward with the application, and we're notified we needed the variances. So that brings us here today. I would add we're proposing a very nice and modern two-family home, well designed. When we designed this home, it was part of our purpose to even before we knew about the variance requirements, to design something that fit in with surrounding character of the neighborhood. We personally viewed several streets locally and saw, particularly on our street, the 3 residences to the left of ours. And there's pictures that have been supplied to you. I could go through those with you as well. It's 187, 189 Tishner, number 183 Tishner, and also number 179 Tishner are all 2-family houses, virtually identical to what we intend to build on our site. We have a similarly sized site. It's about 6,300 square feet, which is a conforming lot for the 2-family zone, which we're proposing. And as well with designing our house, we of course have a very well-planned house. Our architect took into consideration a lot of the neighborhood flow and other issues, again, to try to design something that fit well. When we learned about our issues needed for the variance, we learned a little bit more about our house and spoke with the town engineer, who's been a great help, and we basically came before the board for the 2 variances. Speaking to the variances, we have the house conforms in every way except for the ones, the 2 variances were cited. It conforms to setbacks, it conforms to side yards, it conforms to rear yards, lot coverage.
Can I interrupt you just for a minute, please?
Certainly.
You stated that you're a member as well as the attorney for, right?
That's correct.
It appears at this point you're sliding into factual testimony, so would you mind if we swore you in?
Oh, sure.
Okay. You raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you give here tonight is the whole truth?
I do. Thank you. We, as I was mentioning, conform to the setbacks, the side yards, the rear yards, the lot coverage, the height, the lot area. We virtually, yes.
I had a question about
Sure.
parking. If I recall correctly, in your initial application, you requested a variance for parking. You wanted a variance in order to be allowed to park 1 car in the driveway, because it's a 1 car width garage on each side, and our ordinances require 2 spaces per unit.
That's correct, and that's correct. We also need that variance as well. I'm sorry. That's our.
Okay, so that's a yes.
Yes.
In there. Okay.
So those are the ones we need: the curb cut, the front steps, and also the parking.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sure. Essentially, with respect to, if we can, addressing the design waiver for the curb cut, our steps, our engineer had supplied.
Mr. Rao?
Yes, sir.
We're getting the signal that they're having a hard time picking up the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Is
so
that better?
Either you can pick up the microphone or just speak into it closer.
Okay.
You can also move it up.
It'll come up if you hold it up.
I'll stay right there if that's all right. So our engineer had, after we had our completeness hearing, gone back to the site, and as well as we supplied pictures of every house on the street within the 200-foot as we were requested. They also, on the same side of the street, noted the other, this is with regard to the steps, encroachments that the other units had. Again, ours is proposed to be 6 foot back, and the current 3 houses to our left are approximately 1.3 feet, 1.46 feet, and 1.33 feet. And those are the 3 similar 2-family houses, which are much less than actually we're proposing. And as well, the single-family house to our right is 4.29 feet. And again, going down the block, 5.56 feet, And then when you go 3 houses down to 167 Tishner, that one actually is 11.88. So the 2 on the right and the 3 on the left have actually much less setbacks than ours. And I didn't know if you had any questions on that or with respect to the pictures before I move on to the...
What sheet was that, Mr. Rao?
That was a sheet supplied by Formosa Engineering.
What's the title?
It says references, let's see, it says plan of survey.
And the date?
2/19/2013.
I'm sorry, I think the date, I have a date of 2/12.
Yeah, that's correct, and then it was sealed 2/19. I'm sorry, it is 2/12/2013 with the sealed signed signature of 2/19/2013.
Just wanted to
That's
clarify.
correct. Thank you.
I'm not sure we're all looking at the same thing here. It's this piece.
So one sheet.
A single sheet that came.
Okay, I got it now.
What is the proposed distance from the front steps to the front yard? So where you're counting for the setback?
From the front steps to the property line?
Yeah. What is the distance on the proposed house?
On the proposed, that would be 6 foot.
6 foot. And what were you saying the average was?
I'm sorry, 6.5 feet. The average of the other properties?
Yeah.
Mr. Rao, is it the lectern you're having trouble with?
No, it's Hal.
Am I
You need to
okay?
put the microphone closer to you.
I was asking what the distance on the proposed house from the steps to the property line,
Yes, that's 6.5 feet.
and the average for the neighboring properties, or on the block.
Right. The 3 to the left of us, that's again from the end of the steps. The number 187, 189 Tishner is 1.3 feet. The other 183 Tishner is 1.46 feet. And then 179 Tishner is 1.33 feet. Those are the 3 duplexes to our left.
All right, so when I look at these plans, I'm seeing the edge of the steps that you're counting as being a 1-step rise to a long run that is 17.79.
On the proposed?
Right. No, on this is on 179 Kitchener Avenue.
Correct.
So I guess my question would be to Sal is which would we count there in the setback calculation? The 1 step up or the bulk of the structure for the staircase at address 179?
You mean for the front yard setback?
That's correct.
The front yard setback is measured at the face of the house.
At the house?
Yes. But the steps are then considered encroachments. And then the ordinance allows a certain amount of encroachment within the allowable front yard setback. So there's 2 issues. There's the front yard setback, and then the steps are allowed to encroach a certain distance into that front yard setback. So they provided the setbacks to the building facades of the adjacent properties, and then the setbacks to the actual steps, so that you can see where the differences in the encroachments that exist now.
Okay, so is that run of 17 feet included as part of that encroachment?
The encroachment would be the difference between the setback of the building itself to the front of the steps. So,
Right, I understand.
So it's 24.65 less 17.19. That would be the encroachment into the front yard. And it's a matter of how far into the required front yard setback the encroachment is. You follow me?
But the applicant is saying that it's only 1.46 feet. So I guess I understand what Mr. Descal is asking. Look, is it the main steps or is it the run with one step up right near the sidewalk that counts as the steps?
Right, which I might count as the front walk to the steps,
And
rather
because
than...
I'm wondering if that's what's
That would
happening.
be a front walk. I would think you would.
Even though there's one step up to the front walk, you wouldn't count that as the steps?
No.
I think it's more than one step though, if you look at the pictures.
Well, I thought,
I mean, for 187 to 189, it doesn't look like there's any step. Then for 183 and 179, it looks like there's a lot of steps.
Right, but they wouldn't be considered the front steps to the building. It's just a step in the sidewalk, just like, it's basically, it's not attached to the house. I mean, they could have a steep sidewalk, or they could level it out and put a step down at the sidewalk. The actual encroachment will be the front staircase, if it's a front porch or if it's a front
can you
stairs.
look at the photographs and just give us how you would read? I think you're right, Paul, 180 and 179.
And look at 179, because this pertains to it, how we define this. It may not be such an encroachment as they're saying. It may not be 6 feet, depending upon how we define it. So if you look at 179 Tishner, on the plans here from the applicant, it says 17.79 feet to the, looks like the
brick steps.
The brick steps, but then if you count the other steps, which are pretty much attached, then you only get to 1.33 feet. So
Yeah, the photograph for 179 and the layout on the plan
Are different.
don't seem to match up.
Right.
That's correct.
'Cause it looks like there's considerably more sidewalk in front of the building on the plan than is shown in the photograph.
But given the photograph, we would say that in fact, the encroachment is to 1.33 feet. Is that correct?
Given
Given what we see in the photograph, the front steps encroach all but 1.33 feet.
difficult to determine that from the photograph, what the encroachment would be.
Well, not the measurement, but my point
Right.
is those steps come virtually to the sidewalk.
yes,
Yes.
I would say yes,
I
they
would
do.
say
So
yes.
I would say that is a 1-point-something foot setback at
That's
that
right.
point. So I guess what we need to see then is what the applicant proposes. Is it, one step up, or is it
Right.
just a whole flight of connected steps?
Yeah.
Because the building is at 25 feet, which is the minimum setback, so we need to see what they actually propose.
This is 25 almost. This is 25.
This one, yeah. Yeah, but
It's the garage is underneath that are driving. Right. I think we need to go on one to get up the first floor. Upstairs.
Yeah.
Are there elevations provided on here? Are there spot elevations at 97.09? Is that a spot elevation on your proposed site plan?
I don't know.
Okay, so what are we waiting for now? What's your next?
Okay. And just a point, what the board is speaking about, that's something we initially dealt with on the initial application. Our front steps actually, where the steps actually land, are much closer to the home. In fact, they might even be within the permitted 12.5 feet. It's the 2 steps that go to the driveways, I think, that were being counted as an encroachment. So I think if we don't take those steps, as we were speaking about, then it wouldn't be an issue, I believe. But it's the fact when we spoke that those steps, we weren't sure if they were or weren't, but we figured we're here on the other issue that we might as well address those.
Okay, so do you have this, where is your drawing or your rendering of what it's going to look like?
Refer to the site plan drawing, I think, is...
These are steps going to the left, and steps going to the right.
It would be great if the applicant could make the case instead of Mr. DeScala. Why don't you tell the board how your steps are configured here, so we get a sense, make our own decision as to what the encroachment is into the setback.
Okay, could you repeat that?
Well, look, we're looking at the site plan here,
Correct.
and I see a flight of steps, and then I see a little walkway, and then I see 2 steps going to each driveway.
That's correct.
Where is the 6 feet that you're saying?
Well, we're permitted 12.5 feet off the house. That's permitted. Where our encroachment begins is the fact that the extra 2 steps that go to the driveways, as you go further out, that those, they're counting as part of the walkway. If you do not consider those part of the walkway, then it would not be an issue before the board, is my understanding.
Does everybody see that? Ms. Gruhl?
There are elevations, correct? There were elevations submitted, attached, so that maybe that would help the board. There were elevations that were submitted with the January 22nd submittal, am I correct?
I believe so.
Elevations on the 2nd and 3rd.
If you look at sheet 2 of 5 of the submission packet.
Right there. There you go. Okay. In the previous submittal, I believe that there were elevations. The site plan, I believe, was revised, but the elevations remained the same. I believe that that's the case. So that there are, the elevations are dated June 27th, 2012.
Yeah.
And that may assist because that gives a bit more detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions for the applicant?
I have a question related to the elevation drawing.
Go ahead.
How does the postman get to the front door? They have to enter the driveway? I mean, I see that there's like a fence, a railing that's at the front of the steps that runs parallel to the street and goes along the steps down to the driveway on either side.
Yeah, I presume...
Or a Girl Scout selling cookies.
Sorry, I didn't...
Or a Girl Scout selling
Yeah.
cookies, right?
I presume because that railing is close to the sidewalk, we'd walk up those, it looks to me from the drawing, 3 steps, and then that's how he'd have the ingress and egress from the, to the main 2 doors.
But it's into and out of the driveway itself, so one needs to enter the driveway to get on to the steps to the door.
And that may well be.
You have an architect here. The architect can speak. I don't want to tell you how to do your application.
Sure,
but
thank you. We have our builder here, and he may be a little bit more familiar with this as far as Tony, if you want to maybe give him an idea.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you'll give here is the whole truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Tony Antonucci, 27 Sussone Terrace, Valley Cottage, New York.
A-N-T-O-N?
Yeah, A-N-T-O-N-U-C-C-I, correct.
Thank you.
And you are, sir?
Construction manager for Garden State Property Management.
Okay. Here is his modifieds. He's not offering expert testimony, he's the manager.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Basically, the question again, sorry, was confusion on...
Microphone, please.
Basically, the question you had was access to those 2 steps, I guess would be from the driveway going in the direction up. That's a common platform shared by both staircases there. So either side can get into either side of those staircases is basically what this diagram is trying to represent.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll stand by just in case.
Any questions? No other questions? What's driving the need to bring these steps closer to the sidewalk?
I guess compliance with your town, Mr. School's zoning.
I guess what I'm seeing is, tell me if I'm correct, is these steps have to come, where the house is now, the steps have to come forward in order to get the garages underneath.
Correct.
Because the garage is sloped, the driveway is sloped
Correct.
down.
Sloping down, correct. Just to try to make the front aesthetically as pleasing as possible, basically what we're trying to do, and as safe as possible.
And noting the 3 houses to the left also, that's where we originally came up with the concept. 3 houses to the left also have the exact similar setup with the garages underneath. I talked to the homeowner who is the immediate adjacent property owner, and he told me a little bit about his property. I guess his daughter lives on the other side. But I guess that's the way all 3 of those were built around the same period of time and had shared a similar
Can I ask a
design.
question?
Mr. Rinda.
I guess the question is, how did you come to the decision to come down to a landing and then have 2 separate sidewalks to each driveway, as opposed to just coming down to a landing or just coming right down to a sidewalk that goes right out to the street, to a front door? We're assuming that if the residents are parked inside the garage, they're in the building already.
Correct.
Or if they're parking in assuming the variance is granted for the parking space in the front, they can easily walk to the sidewalk and around to the front, as opposed to the side steps. And I think that might answer some of the questions as to, why the double fence, why the railing in the front. What was the reasoning behind designing it this way, as opposed to just having a single staircase? Because when you look at the other houses, the other houses on each side, they basically just have a set of stairs that come down and to a walkway out to the sidewalk.
I think the architect was just trying to give a semblance of individuality and separatism on the different doorways. You have your own set of stairs going up, and the other adjacent neighbor would have his own set of stairs going up. I think basically that's all he's just trying to accomplish there.
I guess as a follow-up question, I would ask, would the applicant have any issue with changing that configuration if the board found it to be a problem?
Absolutely not.
And should they move on to their questions about the curb cuts and the parking while we mull over the, our concerns about, if any, about the setback? Why don't y'all move on to the curb cuts and the driveway width, and I think there's also the driveway width is actually an issue. They wanted 11 feet when 10 feet is the max. So there's that issue too.
Yeah, why don't we deal with that, since you raised that issue? That, we have no problem making that 10 feet.
Okay, so that one's done with.
On both sides.
You need 2 curb cuts, why?
Generally, again, keeping in line with the other 3 houses where the house is sited, it would basically bring them into their respective garages.
And these are one-car garages?
Correct.
Just for completeness sake, what would be the alternative to having those 2 separate garages? What would be, in other words, if you didn't have 2 separate garages for each unit, how would you make a single garage? Or is there any alternative to this?
Yeah, that I don't know. I know we spoke a couple times with the town engineer, and we tried a few different configurations, and we thought that this was the most practical, given what we had to work with.
So, Sal, let me actually ask you. It seems to me they could either do a single shared garage right in the middle underneath, or they could go along the side and waste a lot of space going in back to create a garage. I suppose that could be done.
They could also have adjacent garages that would consume the same amount of space as a single shared garage, and have a shared driveway.
Adjacent garages, how do you mean?
Just butting up against each other on the facade of the building. So the garages would be in the middle.
You need to talk into the microphone. He's not getting you.
Okay.
Pull it closer to you.
You could have the garages adjacent to each other in the center of the facade, and have entrances to the right and left, rather than one entrance in the middle.
You would still have the issue with the parking, because you'd still only be able to get one car. You'd still only be able to get one car on each
side. That's correct.
Side,
Right.
and they would still have to have the variance for the extra parking space in the front. So
Right.
that would just be a facade change, but you would effectively have the same thing. Just the garages would be together in the middle, but now you would have 2 staircases, one on each side.
Right, exactly.
to
That
get into the unit.
would resolve the 2 curb cuts too close to each other kind of problem.
So you have a 20-foot curb cut.
Right, but it would be a single curb cut at least, right?
I'm not saying that as an advocate.
No, I
I'm
understand.
trying
I
to-
understand.
The applicant also, in discussions, also looked at the possibility of putting a detached garage in the back or trying to get some sort of a driveway in, but that eats up a lot of space and drastically reduces the size of the house while drastically increasing the lot coverage.
That's right.
Ms. Gruhl.
I'll just put my 2 cents in, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I'm not generally a big advocate of the way that this has been configured. However, I would note that this is the pattern of development on this street. and it's already become the pattern of development, basically. So, and it is a two-family zone, and the lot sizes are the lot sizes. So, to the extent that it would be very nice if the driveways weren't, the facade weren't all driveways, it's the established pattern at this point in time, in my opinion. And I would just note that for the board's consideration. I would not necessarily recommend, the other is I do believe that they can reduce the driveway width. The curb cut, dual, one singular, I think the result will be essentially the same. We do suggest mitigation of that to a certain extent, where we believe that they would be able to plant a street tree to somewhat mitigate that facade and the major curb cut, the two curb cuts versus the one. We did look at that as a potential mitigation consideration.
Plant it where?
They could plant it right in the middle.
Smack in the middle.
Smack in the middle.
Of the side?
In the middle of the lot.
Right in front of the staircase.
Yeah, yes, there is space there. It's in the, you'll note on the photos, one of the considerations that we believe really enhances the streetscape when you particularly have this type of development pattern is the street trees. That tends to mitigate. So to the extent that you can enhance by adding street trees, in the long run, it's my opinion that it creates a better street.
So, I guess safety is the thing that comes to mind with this application more than anything else. And I think about the curb cuts as being a safety issue. I'm not advocating for one thing or another, but I think that one of the reasons that the curb cut rule exists is because of safety. Having two curb cuts close to each other can create traffic conflicts. Could be wrong about that, but that's my memory of it. And I'm wondering if a street tree between those two curb cuts creates a sightline problem that could exacerbate that.
If I may respond, is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
We expect you to respond.
Okay.
I hope you
do. The type of traffic that's going to come in and out of here, I do not believe that a street tree, considering there's street trees all over the place on a lot of immature streets, and I rarely hear issues with that. In my opinion, that the extent of traffic or volume coming in and out, it's not like it's a multifamily development. And it's not at an intersection per se. I don't see that as a significant issue.
Let me ask
Sal may disagree.
In about 60 years, when the tree is 3 feet in diameter, then it may be an issue, but
let me ask
I
a
don't
question.
think that would be a major
The
problem.
applicant, you see the area where we're talking about there? It's in front of the steps that go off to the side. There's a little rectangular area.
Yes.
You could plant a small street tree there. If the board requested it, would you all be in opposition to that?
To putting a street tree?
Putting a street tree there?
Oh, I absolutely think it's a great idea in and of, sure, we'd agree to that.
Just ask them to coordinate with the Public Works Department to do something like that.
Ms. Warren?
This is a sign of me, being relatively newer to the board, but is this does this look like what the town anticipated this block to turn into in the overall plan? I mean, I see that we have 3 buildings that look like this, and I think that if we permitted the entire block to look exactly the same, we're completely changing the tone, the look, the feel, and all kinds of things And I don't really know if this is what South Orange intended. And maybe that's not something I should be asking, but coming from a newer position, I'm wondering what are the positives and negatives, and can we go through that with this particular application? Because I don't think this was the vision.
Well,
Maybe I'm
why
wrong.
don't you ask that of the applicant first, let them respond.
Okay.
So, do you have any response to that?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been up and down the street personally, as well as being there for the disconnects with DPW, and likewise spent many, many hours on the street and the two streets back and forth on either side. And what I'd like to do is, honestly, is to put something up that's really tasteful, that looks good, that's attractive to the town, and that fits. And when we came up with this, the whole reason we looked to do the two-family in the first place is after I went through the other streets, not only were there three houses to the left of ours, but just on our 200-foot radius alone, I believe there's another, on top of those three, another 3, 4, or 5 two-family houses just in that block alone. So I do agree with Ms. Gruhl in the fact that it kind of is what that area has developed into. I think the goal, at least my goal, is to make it tasteful and aesthetically pleasing, and to be a benefit to the neighborhood. In fact, when we spoke to the homeowners to the left and to the right of us and told them what we were doing, they were very encouraged. They said that'll be great. When we told them we were putting up a new two-family. In fact, the homeowner to the right of us asked if we were interested in purchasing her lot to do the same. So, you know, it's not just those three houses, although that's what we kind of patterned the driveways underneath to get parking, because we believe that parking was an important aspect. But the character of the neighborhood is there's many two-families, and I don't think two-families in and of themselves are a negative. I really don't, and it is zoned two-family. I don't know if that answers.
You have a follow-up question?
No, I mean,
I can follow up with a question. I mean, how many on the block are two families? How many houses on the block are two-family houses?
If you just bear with me 1 minute.
Sure.
Like 4.
I know, excuse me, sorry. I know those three are, and I'll have to look at my notes. I know that where is it? Number 158 is as well. Just bear with me.
Well, excuse me, are we questioning whether it should be a two-family house, or are we questioning this particular design? I mean, it's a two-family zone, right?
yeah, like I said,
I asked the question about how many two families there were, but you're right. It really is immaterial because it's a two-family zone.
yeah, and my question may be immaterial. Because
No, I think your question was a good one, and in part I disagree with our planner. I don't know if we should be doing this now. The three houses to the left does not constitute a pattern of development.
No, and when I
Right.
drive around, it didn't feel to
So-
me like the rest of it looked like this. But again, this may not be within the discretion that I can use because it's not within the confines of what we're voting on here. But again, my general impression is that this isn't something that everyone would be really excited about. But again, that's not, unless of course you're driving revenue from it. But again, I obviously have no right to make decisions outside of the confines of the rules that we're working within tonight. So I was just asking.
Yes,
positive, you know?
your comment, if I may, is very well taken. The good news and the bad news of ordinances. There are bulk standards, there are some design standards. That is one, if one were advocating form-based codes where it's more the look and the relationship to the public realm, that's a whole other way of dealing with development. In the traditional sense, if you're not going form-based code, and that's not what this ordinance is and what most ordinances are,
Yeah.
you are somewhat constrained by what the architecture and the design is. That's where the catch-22 comes in. You know, it's a two-family zone. It's got bulk standards that they meet in terms of the lot size. There are some variances, which this board and design waivers, that you have to evaluate, but there are certain constraints to what is permitted. But your question is very well taken. That's the dilemma.
Maybe what you're, I don't want to, maybe what you're thinking is that if this were in a single-family zone and they're asking to put a two-family in here, we would say this doesn't fit with the neighborhood. It's in a two-family zone, whether you like it or not. And that's the way it is. And if you have a two-family home, then things are going to flow from that. Where are you going to put two garages? Are they going to be two garages? So if you're going to put two garages, you're going to need two curb cuts. If you're going to, that's why I was asking, if you want to bring a driveway around the back so everybody gets a garage, there's a lot of lot coverage there. A two-family is going to mean these sorts of compromises, and it's not going to be attractive to somebody who can afford a more expensive house, but that's why you have two-family zones. So this is the zone that allows that. If you can, if you think that these variances that are requested are unreasonable, there's a better alternative, well then, that's something you either turn it down or you negotiate with the applicant to make it better. We have other questions?
Can this house be pushed back any further?
No, that would give us the lot coverage issue. Because then our driveways would extend, our walkways would extend. We're already at 43% and we're permitted 44%. Because we wanted to do the decks, we thought it'd be a little more aesthetically nice than just not putting any decks. Therefore, we were required to put the dry well in, but still we wanted to have a better product. So that was our determination.
Does the fact that you're narrowing the driveways allow you to move the house back any further?
We can check with that, but I don't think much because we're at 43% and the code is 44%.
One thing I'm noticing when I look at the pictures is that in the other houses that look the same, that there's two cars in a few of the driveways, and it looks like they're kind of butting into the sidewalk a little bit. And
so moving it back a foot or two.
Yeah. So again, I don't know if that's within
well,
the parameters of the discussion.
let's get into the question of the variance for that they're requesting for a second car in the driveway. Why don't you tell us what that is and why you think we should give it to you?
Okay, thank you. And just while you were talking, I found a 190, 192 Tishner also is a two-family on the same street. Now, that with respect to the parking, we're required to have two parking spaces, either enclosed or behind the house. For us to put it behind the house, which would be the easy thing, is put up a garage. Then we'd have a lot coverage issue, and as well, obviously, an impervious issue. So that was very difficult to do. So we also talked about trying to design a 1.5, two-car garage. We tried our best to get those in, but I understood from the engineer that would be difficult, as well as another possibility which we threw out there, which could still possibly do, is extend the garage inside and have two cars back to back, so to speak, which would give us a little more space. So we were trying a few different alternatives, and then I guess practically speaking, and perhaps it was safety-wise, I can't recollect, this was the ultimate way that we chose to go.
Can I ask a question here? When I'm hearing we have a lot coverage issue if we do these alternative things, that's based on the assumption that you'll have a lot coverage issue if the house stays the same exact size, correct? So
Correct.
I mean, there has to be that fixed thing. So maybe this is the way that the ordinances are trying to make the houses a little bit smaller with the lot coverage issue and having the one. I'm just trying to figure this out for myself here. Sorry, I'm doing it.
No, and if I may, that's a great point you make. In fact,
I like to look for the assumptions.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't like
that's
to
excellent.
take sentences based on what they're saying, but find out what is the assumption.
So along those lines, and we thought about that as well, and that's exactly what we thought. We've really narrowed our units. They're 18 feet wide. They're so narrow as they are, the current proposed plan, that there's not a whole lot of width to the house at this point in time. So really effectively, to build a two-family, it's you know, although it's a conforming zone, it's very difficult to give any, you want to have good people here, right? So that's at least my thinking. We want to appeal to people. We have central air conditioning. We have a lot of amenities that we're including in the house. But as you take more and more away from the footage, people will look at it and say, hey, you know, this isn't so tasteful. Right now, we're down to 18 feet in width per unit, and we cut that down, so.
So you think by keeping it this size, we're attracting a kind of resident that is beneficial?
Yeah,
and
that's our
therefore-
thinking, and I don't think you can really go much smaller, at least, you know, we looked at a lot of alternatives.
Now, it looks like you didn't, you considered two cars underneath in a long back-to-back parking situation. You've instead opted to put in the basement, a basement, and you've got a toilet down there. So it looks like that will eventually be some sort of room down there.
Not at all. We weren't intending to do anything but to just stub that out in a rough. But we wouldn't be necessarily opposed to, if we can get two cars in there, that would be our preference, honestly.
Well, can you get two cars in there? I'm asking you.
If you permit us to, we'll be happy to.
Is there a reason, Sal, is there a reason why they couldn't, or is that a bad idea to do that?
You can, practically speaking, I think there's enough depth in the basement that you could get a two-car garage in there.
Two cars back to back?
Two cars back to back. Which would eliminate the variance for allowing the car to park in the front of the property. But practically speaking, looking at the photographs of the adjacent properties, chances are people are still going to be parking in the driveway.
Right.
You know,
They'll use the back part of the garage for storage of junk and,
correct.
you know, parking.
So I mean, and what it does, and it reduces the living space in the house, and makes it, my opinion, makes it a little less desirable. So even though you can eliminate one variance by doing that, it's a variance that isn't necessarily going to gain anything. It's not going to reduce lot coverage. It's not going to change the look of the house, the location of the driveways, the number of curb cuts, or anything in that regard. All it does is actually, in my opinion, reduce the value of the house by eliminating usable space within the...
Also, the whole issue of no cars in driveways in front of the house, this is an issue not just on this street. This is an issue across
Correct,
you know, and it's one of
townwide.
these things that's just unenforced in the town. So, you know, what I imagine is going to happen, and I don't, you know, you could say I'm hinting what they should do. I'm not. I just know what's going to happen is we don't give them the variance. We say, of course, we can't give you this variance for parking in the garage, in the driveway, because we'd have to give everybody the variance. There's no particular reason why we should do it for you, and they're going to park there anyways, and nobody's going to get a ticket because that's what everybody does across the town.
We're not giving them a variance to park in the driveway.
No, we wouldn't. I'm just saying I know what's going to happen.
Yeah, okay.
And it's, you know, I don't think I'm giving away the store here. I just know what's going to happen. I don't think we should give them that variance because there's nothing exceptional about this particular application that we should grant them that. We just say, you know, if we do approve it, they've got their one-car garage and we don't grant them approval to park in the driveway and somebody's going to park in it anyways and they could be ticketed if the town ever got serious about doing that.
If you're to go that route, then you have to grant a variance for 1 parking space per unit as opposed to 2.
Right.
In the picture of 179, there's 2 cars parked in the driveway.
Can I think you mentioned early on in your testimony that when you were looking at possible uses of the site, you considered a single-family house as well as a two-family house.
No.
Am I correct?
Actually, when we looked to buy the property, our intent was to buy to own. We're not looking to buy to sell this property, but buy to own it. We intend to keep it for 20, 30 years. So when we looked at this particular property, and that's probably a lot different than a lot of people in town, they want to build a house, sell it, take a profit, and move on. We want to live with this property, and that's why we're asking it be very practical and make sense. So to answer your question, when we looked at this particular lot, we were looking exclusively for something we could build a two-family in because we wanted to keep it.
I don't understand. Who's going to live there? Are you proposing you're going to live there?
No, we're going to rent it out, but we're not going to buy it, spec out a house and sell it for a profit.
Well,
We're intending to keep it.
That's utterly I
was just trying to answer his
I
question.
think that's just utterly meaningless. You could sell it, you could tell us whatever you want, you could sell it at a moment's notice. I just think that's fine, whatever.
Yeah, I guess
Silly.
my point is that there are constraints of what you can do on the site, and the fact is, if you built a single-family house, you could have a single curb cut, you could do a number of things, you know, frankly, to fit potentially better with the site. That was my reason for asking. I thought you mentioned that earlier.
We have other questions for the applicant.
Any additional testimony?
Yeah, do we have any other testimony from the applicant?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Training.
I'll get to it. Do we have any questions from members of the public for the information that's provided here this evening? Okay, so you're through with your application at this point?
I am, thank you.
Okay, so now we'll talk among ourselves, and maybe somebody may want to address Ms. Warren's question if you feel like I did. I thought I addressed it. I don't know if y'all feel the need to also.
Can I just start with a question of clarification about this front yard setback? I am very confused. I thought in the last meeting we discussed this ordinance as saying it was the average and not a fixed 25 feet and not a fixed half of a feet. Can I get some clarity on that issue?
Well, actually, that's very interesting because we had interpreted it prior to that last meeting one way. And then my sense from what the board has interpreted that to mean is that it is a minimum of 25 feet. And then it could be then anything over and above. It's the average of the neighborhood.
But
it's
never
gotta
less
be.
than.
That is my understanding of how this board has interpreted it. Now, I may, and that is actually why
I was surprised
we-
last meeting, and I just want to, so we're still That's where we still are, 25 feet.
And that was why we revised
Right.
the memo, because that was what.
All right, so the first memo reflected a different point of view. That's correct.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. And again, there was some question about the strict reading of it, but my understanding is the board had interpreted it that way.
So,
And I'm not sure that that's right anymore.
Well,
Just,
we need some clarification.
in the case of this application though, right, we have kind of an odd measurement of setback as it relates to, what are we calling it? What are we terming it?
Projections.
A projection of staircase or what have you, right? And I don't know that I've got a complete understanding. I think in that case we would need an average because this projection is beyond what would be allowable and therefore might fall into that average calculation requirement for setback.
The section of the ordinance which deals with projections, which is not an unusual ordinance provision. No projection shall extend any closer to a property line than 1/2 of the required setback distance.
Right. In this
So
case,
if
it
the
goes
minimum
more than the 12,
is
12 and a half.
25,
Right.
correct,
Right.
then it would be based upon exactly what the setback is. And the setback is 25. But if it were extended, if it were set back farther, then that's a whole other issue.
Right. So if it extends closer to this to the property line than 12 and a half feet, that's where the variance gets triggered.
Correct.
And wouldn't we want to see what the average was for the neighborhood properties along that same street?
Well, in terms of your evaluation of the variance, I would think that may be relevant.
Yeah, so I sat here and did the average where I used the photographs to determine where the steps really end, not just the drawing. But I did the average on the side of the street that the property is on, and I come out with 6.43 feet.
Is the average
Is
for
the average.
How many did you do?
I did all the houses that we have on this diagram on their side of the street.
Like 8 or so?
That's right. On the other side of the street, you have these cases where the houses use the driveway as the front walk, and so you get some very deep setbacks. But I think that fact is relevant in terms of considering whether, given this particular site, the variance is.
Right, no, that is valuable. Too bad to use a term that Rusty would use. It's too bad that I got that information from a board member rather than the applicant. But another piece of useful information is that the existing dwelling is only set back 8.7 roughly feet. The dwelling itself, the structure itself. So.
That's right.
So there's a significant improvement over the current setback in the proposed scenario. It's worth noting.
Mr. Adler?
That's a good point. There's also something else that if a house is taking up virtually the entire width of the lot, the closer it comes to the street, the more dense and imposing it becomes.
It appears, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the existing house may be closer, but it's got some breathing room on the side. So that mitigates the effect of its being closer to the street. It's just, but I mean,
Rusty, you made the point that there are just some implications when you try to put a two-family house on a 50-foot wide lot with the envelope constraints of side yard setback and and things. You know, I think what we're seeing here is a series of implications of that. You know, you raise the house up to put a garage on it. Well, that requires, that's good because it gets rid of the driveway to the back and eliminates lot coverage, but then it requires a longer run of steps to get up into the house. And it's, you know, there are a series, once you start from putting a two-family lot on a 2-family house on a 50-foot wide lot and try to get a garage in there, a whole series of things get triggered, right? And I think that's what we're seeing here.
I think we're seeing a little bit more than that. I think we're seeing that plus the fact that this is just a big house with a lot of living space for a lot of people. And for me, the question is starting to become, well, should we grant these ordinances? Because these ordinances, when taken together as a totality with all the other rules, create really essentially something maybe differently than what was contemplated. It's not just going outside these little rules, but when these little rules taken into consideration with all the other rules, maybe not little, but these particular rules, little amount of rules, taken into consideration with the totality of the other things that the property is subject to, maybe if these are complied with, it really is the best for the property. So I'm looking at this beyond just these particular ordinances, but how they impact all the other components. That's just kind of how I'm seeing this particular application. And look,
I'm a little unclear as to what I mean.
Yeah,
what you mean.
Well, I mean, I'm not just looking at this. I mean, the property is subject to these rules, and by granting this, it's just, by granting these exceptions, we're effectively allowing the house to be at the maximum lot coverage, right? And if these aren't granted, then the house has to be smaller and less overbearing on the property.
Well, yes, you could say by virtue of bringing the house and the projection from the house up closer to the curb, it allows the house to occupy more lot coverage, as opposed to if you pushed it back.
Or made it smaller.
Or made it smaller. Yeah, if you made it smaller.
Yeah,
Yes.
so if you made it smaller and use that lot coverage for other purposes, then we wouldn't have to grant these variances, essentially is what I'm saying. So I don't think that the applicant's limited to only this option.
They're not.
No, they're certainly
They
not.
could make it smaller, they could
build a single-family house, they could do a lot of things.
They could do a lot of things. I think, if I may chime in here, that something I do think we need to consider also is that, look what's there right now. Yeah, it's a wreck.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying we should throw in the towel and take whatever comes our way, but it's a mess. And so somebody's coming forward willing to put up something new. There are two-family homes on the street. It's in a two-family zone. And that's something that we should consider.
So is the hardship in this case that it's too narrow a lot for a two-family house and it's owned for two-family?
Well,
Therefore,
the zone is a 40-foot width zone, it's a 50-foot lot, and it's zoned for two families, so
right.
I don't
Can't
think
use
that's a hardship.
Right,
in
so
this case.
that's kind of being a little facetious.
Oh, I
but-
see, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, by making the house bigger, I do agree with the applicant that when you make the house bigger, it becomes more valuable. You've also got a backyard there that people can play around in, and that's something that's meaningful to people, as opposed to, for example, a driveway that circles around back.
That's right.
And occupies lot coverage there. Sure, I'd prefer a single-family home.
But it's a two-family zone.
It's a two-family zone, and this is part of the bargaining back and forth of, we have somebody willing to invest here. Yes, they want to make money on it, that's clear. There's nothing wrong with that per se, and is this acceptable?
I don't prefer one family. I don't have a preference for it.
Other thoughts? Okay, well, let's break this down. There was some talk about we can break this down into, for example, the stairs. I mean, if we wanted to say they just have the initial flight and then just something level, or would we be okay with what they have?
I have a clear preference personally that the stair be accessible directly from the sidewalk, and that someone not have to enter into a place that cars utilize in order to gain access to the stairs. I think for me, that's a real safety issue. And I think it's something that they can do something about and should.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, that's not going to change, that's likely not going to change, maybe it would change the encroachment, would it? You're just saying just a pure safety issue.
That's just a safety issue.
Well, it would also change the encroachment because you wouldn't need that, those steps up.
The landing.
No.
Right, the landing would be at grade or closer to it. So it would create a little further setback.
It might pick up one step or two. Yeah, 12 inches or something.
And the applicant said that they're amenable to doing that. So.
Yeah.
What's the safety issue with the side steps?
Entering through the
I mean,
driveway.
I know it's going into the driveway, but what's the safety issue?
I just cringe when I hear of people, entering in and out of the driveway in order to gain access to the front door. I think that somebody backing their car to the driveway has got yet another thing to have to worry about. Now, it's true, people walking down the sidewalk would be the similar target, but there's less time to react when you have to enter into the driveway.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
I just don't like it because it's not like any of the other houses on the street, unless I'm wrong, of having a little step up right on the sidewalk. I think it's more inviting if you can just walk up to the front yard, but I don't feel particularly strongly about it either.
I mean, it may be the only architectural feature the house has, and I recognize that. Maybe we could trade it off for something, on the facade.
Well,
I don't know.
Is this
the
board?
cornice molding?
Is this
perhaps.
board? Let me ask broadly: is this board just indisposed to considering this application at all? I mean, are we talking about details when the board doesn't want to approve this application? Where are we?
I'm thinking, well, what is wrong with building a one-family house? I mean, it's zoned for two. That doesn't mean that there are in fact one-family houses on the street.
Mm-hmm.
There are in fact one-family houses in many zones that are zoned for two.
Mm-hmm.
So what's wrong with doing that and not needing all the variances, not crowding the lot?
You would assume that somebody wants to construct a one-family home there, that you'd leave this eyesore up there for a while. Although the applicant now has the property, so you assume that they would want to build something to recoup their investment.
I'd have to put myself in the position of an investor, right? Sadly, right? Or a potential owner of a home there. I mean, the value of that property is set based on a two-family house. So when you buy it and build a one-family house, then you're paying the two-family premium, as it were, in order to build there. And then you're building it next to a whole row of two-family houses. And so if you're inclined to live in a single-family house, you're probably not inclined to live in one that's nestled in with a whole bunch of two-family houses. So I totally get that personally. It's we zoned it that way. We kind of have to live with, in my opinion, with the fact that we zoned it.
But if we gotta keep the aesthetics of the neighborhood, why do we have to have the steps designed like that? I think the steps are a problem.
What is?
If you look at walking, just as he said, you gotta come this way, so you have 3 steps going up, and then you have.
Why is that a problem?
Well, I mean, and just think about it that again as this from a safety standpoint. If you're walking straight across the garage, then to go up the stairs, why can't it really be redesigned to look just like the others on the block?
Where it just comes straight out to the sidewalk without a a little platform there, is what, so you agree with Mr. DeScala?
Yes,
Frankly, that would potentially bring it into conformity with the average setback on that side of the block, as opposed to being a little worse than the average. But we're talking rounding errors here, relatively, right? I mean, I think given the conditions on the block, given the fact that there are a number of staircases on the block that encroach further than 12.5 feet, given the fact there are a number of buildings on the street that have two driveways coming in, given the photographs and the reality of people parking in the driveway, it feels to me a bit, you know, that there's a consistency of what's proposed to what's on the block. And the fact that it's zone 2 family, and it's, you know, I mean, it feels to me like, as much as I'm not comfortable, this is not my ideal of what we would build, but I think on this block and in the streetscape, it relatively fits. And I do think you have to keep going back to the current condition a lot, and the fact that someone's willing to step up, put some money down, and make it a livable, modern structure helps the town. So
So you're not opposed to just say, no, you know, we want a single family? Because I think that's the first thing we need to decide here, and then we can quibble with the design elements.
I'm, you know, the reality is we're dealing with a zone that's been zone 2 family, and the house comes pretty close, and I think is consistent with other houses on the block. And so, no, I'm inclined to consider this application. I think, can we make some minor improvements, maybe, but.
Mr. Shapiro.
I agree, and I also think that, as you pointed out, the owner purchased the property with the expectation, reasonable expectation, based on a 2-family zone, that they will be able to derive the income from the 2-family house, which is a function of the value of the house. And to impose a 1-family restriction on the house depreciates the value of the house on a block where there's other 2-family houses. And what's more, the fact that they're going to demolish an existing eyesore and put up an attractive new house, I think enhances the appearance of the street. So I'm inclined to move forward with the application.
Yeah, that's where I am too.
No, but I don't think that we are saying that you have to go to 1 family.
No.
I don't think we are saying that.
No.
I'm just
I'm
saying
not saying
that,
that.
I'm saying that we agree with the 2-family. We agreed investment, we agreed with the beautification of this property and the street, but maybe we can look at a different design.
Okay, so then let's move forward then and start.
Oh, never mind. It's fine.
You sure?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I guess I was just considering in my mind for a second the implications of investors to continue to buy all the properties along and come with the same exact request to us, and what would the overall impact of continuing to accept this be? But I don't know that that's for today.
Well,
How can you prevent it?
you know, that might, but, you know, this is, you know, that's what, who knows what's going to happen. And if you've taken a look down the block, frankly, it's a very modest street.
No, I've been there.
And this is an improvement over what's there now. It's a distinct improvement. And, you know, this is where I think sometimes where you have to recognize we operate within ordinances. We have ordinances. We may not like them, but if you're going to be honest, you kind of got to do it. I wouldn't approve this based upon their expectations of making a profit. I don't care about them making a profit. They'll make a profit if we grant it, but that's not my reason that I would consider this. My reason is I think it's a reasonable application, and we may want to tinker at the edges. But that's the reason, that their realistic expectation of a profit, I don't particularly care about.
Yeah, I'd also add that if assuming that this is properly noticed, that there are no members of the public here to speak out in opposition to this application. So, you know.
Okay, so I'm assuming by the silence that most of us are okay with considering this 2-family. So then let's move on to, do you have any particular concerns about amending the application? They've agreed to go to 10-foot on the driveway width, so they don't need the variance there.
They've agreed to add a street tree, which I'm not sure, we'd probably want to define that, because street tree would normally be something that the town would plant.
Well, they might not need a street tree. If everybody thinks that they should lose that platform and just go straight to a straight walkway up front, which the applicant said they would do, then they're not going to have a street tree. But do people agree with Mr. Simper? That's what Mr. Simper would like. I think that's what you wanted. That is what you wanted, Mr. Descala. Do other people want that?
I don't have strong feelings about it either way.
Mr. Adler?
I think it's a shame to get rid of the two side stairs because they are an architectural detail that I think looks good, but I think Mr. Descala scared me, so.
One other consideration, if I may, at this point, regarding the two side stairs. They do abut the driveway, and there is a significant grade difference going down the driveway from street level down, because it's basically almost not a basement, but a lower garage level. So the pitch on the driveway at those stairs, there could be a few inch difference from one side to the other. So it could be a little uneven at that point too, if they're going that way. Whereas if it's a single stairway out to the sidewalk, then it would be more of a level landing.
That's a good point.
So I'm comfortable saying make it a straight run of stairs.
Okay, so there's four of us who would prefer to make it a straight run of stairs. Mr. Shapiro, do you particularly care?
I have no problem with
Okay, Ms. Warren, do you particularly care? I'd prefer a straight run of stairs too. The applicant would consider doing a straight run of stairs. I mean, not a straight run of stairs. Maybe add another step away from the initial set of stairs and then a level walk.
By all means, whatever the board proposes.
Ms. Gruhl, you want to say something?
Just two things. That doesn't necessarily, I don't think, and I asked Sal this, eliminate the street tree if the street tree oftentimes is between the sidewalk and what's called, in the parkway, between the sidewalk and the street. I don't know whether that is feasible here.
It's feasible. The question is it allowed?
Well,
Can people
that's-
plant in the median there?
That's what it's on.
Yeah, I not knowing what's out there, there could be utilities out there, or they may have to make their connections in that location to the building, or it may go through the driveway. I would question the board in placing any kind of restriction or condition that they place a street tree in that location. Plus, once the stairway going down to the sidewalk in that area, the mailman or whatever, if they park in front of the house, the most direct route is to open the door, hop out, and go straight up the stairs. So, street trees are a nice idea, and I think there's some on the street, but putting it directly in front of the front walkway is not something I would necessarily recommend.
What about plantings along the walkway? There's a picture here of one of the neighboring houses that has landscape zone on either side of the walkway leading up. I don't know, that's not a street tree.
Again, I would caution the board with any conditions regarding the landscaping of general landscaping of a property like that, because things change in time. It's in the applicant's best interest, if this is a rental property, to keep it looking as nice as possible in order to get people to want to live there. And I would leave it to the applicant to maintain landscaping that way.
What was proposed? Actually, and I was going to make that suggestion as well as a backup. What is proposed in the area that would not have been, which is not used for the stairs?
And the driveway.
And what is not used for the driveway, what is not used for the stairs? What was proposed? You weren't paving that, were you? You were proposing to, because it's not clear on here, and I have one other question. I assume because of the grade, the going a little sub into the, that there will be a need for retaining walls on the sides? A little, right? Or yes or no?
Yes, to get the acceptable elevations.
That's what I, it appeared that that's what may need to be addressed. So those, I assume that those retaining walls would comply with the ordinance and would be acceptable to Sal.
According to the grading that's on the drawing that was submitted, I guess it's, make sure I got the right one here. The February 13th, 2013 revision, if you look at the grading plan, the difference in elevation from the sidewalk to the garage is about 3.5, to the grade level at the garage is about 3.5 feet. So you're looking at a small retaining wall. It's not a massive structure. And I would assume that would only be on the outsides of the driveway, and that the staircase itself coming down would essentially go down to grade at the driveway. And then the question is, I guess, the area between the paved driveway and the staircase is going to be landscaped?
Of course.
So, that there wouldn't need to be a retaining wall there. The stairwell itself, the stairs itself would serve as basically a wall. It's only on the outside of the driveway that a retaining wall would be necessary.
So there's green. So there is proposed landscaping. That's the clarification.
So is this something we need to add as a condition, or you're saying that this is proposed?
Well, that's up to the board. The applicant has testified to that. but-
Where would, so, I'm still not sure where this landscaping would go that wasn't on the original application. Is it along the side here?
That's what we were just talking about, but
Between the driveway and where the projection stairs go down.
Like on 183, Titchener?
Kind of like that, but more than that,
Yeah,
next to the stairs.
I don't care. I really, it doesn't matter. It's such a small area. I would let the builder, let the people who are building this decide if they want to do that. I just don't think it's an issue that we should bother with. We could, but I don't see it as that big a deal. Any objections? No. Okay. What about so the curb cut is allowed in our ordinances for exceptional circumstances. So this would be the exceptional circumstance of a two-family house, and it's on a relatively narrow lot, and what we would gain from it is saving lot coverage in order to have a backyard, which I think is a very nice thing to have. The issue of parking, would we just say we give them a variance to park one car in the garage? That's what we say?
No, it'd be to have parking in the front yard would be the variance. Not in the
We're not
garage.
giving them that variance.
No, I think the variance is from needing 2 spaces, needing 1.
Yes. They can have one space.
So are you requiring the 2 spaces underneath now?
No.
No.
So there's one underneath,
And that's it.
and that's it?
So you're granting a variance to allow only 1 parking space per unit.
Right, and with the understanding that if the town chooses to enforce the law and they park a car in the driveway, they'll get a ticket. But that we're not, so we're not exempting them from the law.
Okay.
is that the variance they're requesting? Is it to only have 1 car, or is it to have?
The variance requested was to allow a parking space in front of the house so that they would meet their parking requirement per the ordinance.
And we're not accepting that request.
And we're modifying the variance request?
You're granting a different variance.
granting
By
different
denying
variance.
that, you have to grant the other variance.
I'm sorry?
By denying that, you need to grant the other variance.
Right, it's one or the other.
By denying their request to put 2 cars in that space, we have to grant the variance for the one-car space.
No, by denying the variance to park in front of the house, you're only allowing them one parking space for each unit.
Yes.
And ordinance requires two.
Yes, and we're giving them that variance.
But they haven't requested it, does that matter?
Well, they would probably accept it.
You can ask him. Mr. Rao?
Yes, I'm just thinking procedurally. I know the goal is to have enough parking per family. So I'm asking if the board is basically deeming, as well, it sounds like it's town-wide, that for those families that do have parking that are limited to one-car garage or parking in front, then they're only permitted to have one car per family. Is that my understanding correct on that? Just so I understand. I know it may not be enforced now, but is that?
I don't know what's going on in those properties.
May I kind of go back to what the chairman had suggested, which I didn't note. I didn't say anything before, but I actually think that as an option, that the tandem parking, the two-car tandem parking in the building, the two-car garage approach is a very reasonable approach considering the constraints. And that would technically eliminate the need for the variance. At the same time, frankly, it does give the renters an opportunity, the tenants, an opportunity for two spaces without parking on the driveway. You can't control that, but at least it does give that option that they have two spaces within the garage.
Kind of playing games, but I don't think we should be saying, I don't know how we grant them a right to park a car in the driveway in front of the house if that's against the law. Because we're not here changing the law. We're here doing something else. I mean, we're not here changing the parking laws.
No, we wouldn't be changing the parking laws. We'd only be allowing them an exception from the variance, or from the ordinance requirements. That's all. The ordinance says you can't park in front of the house, right?
Yeah.
So, you're saying that the parking ordinance of South Orange differs from they both say you can't park in front of the house.
Doesn't that mean in the street though, not in the driveway?
No, it means that you can't park your car in the driveway in front of your house. Most people don't know that. Everybody does it anyways, absolutely. But to answer your question, Mr. Rinda responded that the house becomes less valuable.
Well, that's an opinion. The applicant, it would be up to the applicant if they were to accept that. You're looking at.
Well, I bet they would accept it if we demanded it of them. The question is, do we want to demand that of them?
I think they accepted it before.
Well, do we want to, we didn't really ask it of them.
The tandem
I think the problem we found with that, and we could look further into, I think the problem was either one of two things, and Sal, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't recall the exact conversation. Two things. One is there would be a lot of more practical concern is once there's a car in the garage, there'll be a lot of shuffling, and in fact, possibly a safety concern because people will be pulling in and out to switch cars back and forth. I think that was one issue. I believe the second issue was possibly one of, was it carbon monoxide or something like that, if the car is in there. Honestly, I don't remember, but some concerns were raised.
The shuffling really isn't an issue because whether it's two cars parked in the garage or one parked in the garage and one parked in the driveway, you're still, stuck behind the other car if that's the issue. As far as the carbon monoxide, that I don't know. That would be a building code issue, but I don't, again, it's, you don't start the car with the garage door closed. And, you know, I don't know that that's an issue.
I'm with you. I think this is a much better approach, and I'd be very comfortable if the applicant accepted that. We eliminate the need for that variance. We go with a straight front of stairs, which probably pulls the stairs back to encroaching a distance consistent with the average of the neighbors, and I think we're in a much better place.
You're talking about the stairs, or I thought we were talking about the garage.
I just summarized my entire position. I apologize.
And I like that position. I think the tandem garage is a good idea.
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable certainly with saying, okay, you can park in the street, in front of the house, because we really shouldn't be saying that. And I was also uncomfortable with saying that a house should only have one parking space.
Right.
And this really solves our problem. And it was a problem thrown at us that maybe didn't have to be thrown at us. So I like what Michael said, and I would support.
So you actually like my original idea that I backed off of?
Yes, we're
That
now.
Michael's now reiterating.
We're now supporting it.
What do you all think?
If I may, Mr. Antonucci's actually looked at the plans. We recall what the issue was doing that.
If I may address the board, the only issue we would cut down on the type of vehicle we could put in the first spot due to a micro-lamp that we're going to need to support the first floor and the rest of the building. And that would be a concern. You know, you wouldn't be able to get a van in there.
Talking about a beam?
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry, micro-lamp or power beam. That would definitely offset on what type of vehicle we can get into the first spot. It might be, for a potential renter with families, what type of vehicles they would own. It would be a little bit detrimental to Mr. Reyes.
Is that shown on the plan?
Yeah, if you see it, it's
On the basement plan?
yeah.
Okay, well, there's one in the garage now, too, though.
Right, but that's just in a living space. You could box that out, and I'm talking. It's right here.
They're the same size. Right, but there's one going across here, too, as well.
Yeah.
In the parking
Why can't
garage
you
area.
just dig it out deeper? You can dig the basement deeper.
That would add a cost, obviously. Then you have to put another course around the basement.
You're digging it out anyways right now, so you have to dig out another foot or two. Yeah, I suppose it would add a couple more costs of a.
But Mr. Chairman, you might get into a water table problem, and with a host of other issues, going a little lower.
Water.
Listen,
Yeah.
these are not, to the extent it is not possible to park a van in there, then that's just an issue that a renter is going to consider when they choose to rent or not rent, right? I do think this is a viable solution to otherwise a pretty sticky problem. And I think if design prevents it from being big enough to put a van in, well then renters will consider that when they choose to rent.
And that's their problem, whether they want to do it.
And that's their problem, right?
Yeah.
But
Or the builder's problem, they want to force that issue on their renter.
That's right.
Well, does Mr. Adler and Mr. Parlapiano are pretty clear about this? Mr. Semper,
I think that the guy has a van or truck, hey, you can't park there, he's not gonna wanna
my
rent it.
question is, do you agree with Mr. Parlapiano and Mr. Adler that we should ask this?
Yes, I agree.
Mr. Shapiro?
I agree.
I'm not sure.
Ms. Warren?
It's not going to switch my vote one way or another.
I think we should ask it of them also. Would you all be willing to make that, remove that room in the basement and make it tandem parking?
engineer, she's just pointing out some of the things. Of course, I think we have to contend with a few different issues if that happens. The mechanicals as well will have to be removed, or moved, I should say. We have, and the kitchen's right above the that area. I guess my question to the board is, are they still willing to consider the, I understand the rationale, the limitation of the, or granting of the variance for one space in the garage, which was, I believe, originally proposed. That way we can keep the design, the aesthetics, as well as whatever mechanical issues, the support issues. Is that something the board would still consider at this time, which I think was originally proposed?
I mean, given that we now, given that there's an option to comply with the zone, that I think doesn't substantially impact the living space of the property, I'd be reluctant to grant a variance on that, particularly given how important parking is in a neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm also, I've waffled out. Clearly, I've waffled on this. I suggested it and backed off, but trying to think back of the way I usually approach these is if you can comply with the ordinance, that's
right.
what the ordinance is. That's what our obligation is. You can do it. Yes, you lose a room in the basement, but so what? This gets you back into the confines of the ordinances. That's what the townspeople expect. Now, can people still park in the driveway? Oh, they might do it, but at least they have the option
That's right.
of parking in the garage like they should. I don't think the issue of carbon monoxide is an issue. I don't think I think you can dig deeper. As far as I know, the issue of water tables, unless Mr. Rinda tells me there's an artesian well there.
According to the zoning table, it looks like they can go higher too, with the building height.
Yeah, foot.
By a foot.
Yeah. So, no, I think that you all should do the parking, the tandem parking underneath the house.
6 inches. Yeah.
6 inches.
So are y'all willing to do that? Are y'all willing to do that? The board still maintains that you should park in tandem underneath the house. So is that acceptable to y'all?
Sal, are you familiar with?
Hey, how about if we take a break, let you all, give you all a couple minutes to discuss. This is a good time to take a break. And we are going to get on to the other case before we get out of here this evening. Okay, we're back in session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
We appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. It was definitely useful to us. So our considerations, which we'd like you to consider, just before we make a final decision, is threefold. One is, if we go this route with the tandem garage that's been proposed, of course, we've already discussed the additional cost for the foundation, the courses, moving the mechanicals. But one thing and the board has noted that several times, and we've mentioned it, one thing we would just want you to consider and choose which you deem to be the right choice for this house is, my thoughts and my feelings are, when you take that section of basement to make it the tandem garage, what happens is you lose the basement, which is obviously inevitable. That becomes an unheated section. But I think the real concern for me on the street, and just my thoughts looking forward in time, is I think that the families that we anticipate living here, they're going to have stuff. I know I have three young daughters, and when I moved into a 4-bedroom house, we didn't have a lot of stuff. But as we grew, we had a lot of stuff. And without the basement, I think it's going to cut down a lot on their storage. I think ultimately, whatever the board decides, I think that's a very strong consideration. I think ultimately the practicality is that they're going to be forced to use that second tandem, which would anyway, and that will be more or less an unheated space, which won't function, I think, as the board is looking for. But that's just my opinion. I don't have a crystal glass, but those are my considerations if you guys could think about them. We just want to build the best house we can that serves the town and practically makes sense.
I appreciate that, and I think what we're trying to do is to find a way to live within the zone where it's at all practical. And I understand your point. The same as people have a detached garage, it often turns into a storage space rather than
Correct.
a garage. But given the importance of parking, I think it's a big move to say to grant a variance on parking if we don't have to. And I think in this case, what we're saying is we don't absolutely have to.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Parlapiano. Our fealty should be to the ordinance and to the wishes of the townspeople without sounding too grandiose. But there is often a lot of thinking that went behind those ordinances. And I agree that people may stuff in that second part, and they may continue to park illegally, as many people do now. On the other hand, they do have that option of parking the 2 cars there, which is what the ordinance intends. People could also put a shed in back too, to put their stuff, just as I've done.
And just a clarification, that isn't a lot coverage issue, sheds?
Well, you might have to, it is a lot coverage issue, yes.
Okay.
But, then you could remove the deck. That's life. You can't have everything. So that's my opinion on it. Look, let me also say, I'm also concerned about having a heated space down in a stubbed out bathroom in the basement. That to me is a tip-off for using that as possibly a sublet. And I get very concerned when I start seeing that kind of stuff in the basement. So that's a separate concern. That wasn't my primary concern, but that is a concern. Otherwise, I think this is a good application.
Yeah.
And y'all are investing some money in it. You want to make a profit. I understand that. I understand profit, and I think you can do that with these considerations, and I'd like to see this move forward.
If this is the only issue that's holding us up, and that's how the board feels, we agree to that.
Okay, good.
And we look forward to working with the town.
Okay. Okay, is there anything else at this point? I think we've covered the driveway width, we've covered the curb cut, we covered the front steps, the tandem parking in the basement. And I think, is there anything else that?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anything else with the parking? I think that's it.
The street tree is out?
The street tree's out. Unless they want to put something there, that's their call.
We just have to define how far they can extend the front steps.
Well, I imagine they will do what's rational, is they will go down, down, down until they get to grade level, and they'll just make a walkway.
As per code. Step and rise is as per code, according to height.
Right, right.
And wherever that leads them.
Right. Okay. Okay, so may we have a motion?
I would move that we approve this application as, I think I said this now, that we approve this application as we've discussed the changes with so no variance needed on driveway width because we've reduced that to 10 feet. No variance needed on parking. But with a design waiver for 2 curb cuts and a variance for the encroachment by the staircase into the front yard setback.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Did I get it?
Do you need to include the condition in converting the garage into a 2-car tandem
Yes.
garage?
The garage will be, one of the conditions is the basement will be converted into a 2-car tandem garage.
On each side, right?
On each side.
Yeah. I think that does.
Yeah.
We're good?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Whose motion was it? Mr. Parlapiano's.
It was a group motion in the end.
Okay, Mr. DeScala?
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Semper?
Yes.
Mr. Adler?
Yes.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes.
And Ms. Waring?
No.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to the next case. Good luck.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
There's a lot of heavy lifting. That one. I don't think so, we just had one. I could be wrong though. There's a tan.
I mean,
I like the photo.
I was gonna say,
Sorry?
I just clean. I just clean. My stuff gets cluttered. Like, not everyone builds stuff up. Not everyone uses stuff. I voted no.
Yeah, how come you didn't say why? That's kind of customary.
I don't know. People spoke a lot.
You did. Maybe you said it before. So many words. There's a pretty garage.
Okay, so our next case that we're moving on to is case 1000, Anthony Molinaro at 174 Church Street. This is applicant is seeking to propose a 2-story addition to rear of existing 2-story dwelling, convert structure from 1-family dwelling into a 2-family dwelling.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Skolnick. I represent the applicant. Presently, 174 Church Street is a vacant, dilapidated building. My client seeks to restore this property and do an addition. All the variance requested are due to the current building that currently exists that will not be changed. None of the additional work requires variances per se. The whole project requires variances. 2 things I want to bring to attention before testimony is we didn't ask for variance for the driveway. We'll defer to the board. The driveway that currently exists is 11 foot wide. The board either grants a variance for that or asks us to cut the driveway back to 10 feet. That is fine. The planner says that 4 parking spaces are required. I believe more than 4 exist now. Your testimony, 2 in the garage, 1 next door to the garage, and 1 in front of the garage. My client could make the driveway wider in the back, put 2 in the garage and 2 adjacent to it. It'll be up to whatever the board desires on that aspect. I request that I swear Mr. Molinaro.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give is the whole truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Anthony Molinaro, 319 Regal Boulevard, Livingston, New Jersey.
Mr. Molinaro, what's your occupation?
Landscape.
Where's your business located?
On Church Street, 175 Church Street.
How long have you been in town in business?
30 years.
You own several investment properties in this town?
Yes.
Please describe for the board 174 Church Street.
It was a dilapidated building. It was for sale for over 2 years, vacant for 2 before that. They tried to sell it. It was an eyesore, of course, from my property. And we decided to buy it as an investment property and to add an addition to it.
Can you please describe the building surrounding 174 Church Street?
Building to the right is a two-family. The building to the left is a two-family, but I think it's being occupied as one. And there are several other two-families on the Church Street, in a 200-foot radius.
There are also commercial properties in 200 feet?
Yes, my property across the street is a commercial piece of property. And
what
there's South
property?
Orange Disposals at the end of the street.
Commercial. Okay, it's commercial. This is the same street that First Baptist is on, up at the top?
Yes, that's on Church, on South Orange Avenue, and corner of Church.
It's all the way down though.
That's all the way at the other end.
section.
That's at the other end.
Like if you pass the church and you keep going straight,
Right.
so almost the very end. It's
If you
a
look
couple
at the
houses up.
page on top, Jim, you see where South Orange Avenue is, and where 174 Church Street is in relation to it. It's between Third and the end of, in South Orange Disposal, or the township yard.
Mr. Molinaro, what do you plan on doing specifically with the current house and with the addition? Please tell us
We're
what the
putting
plan is.
a 20 by 30 addition on the back for a single-family apartment.
What do you
use the existing building, renovate it as a single family, well, two families, front and back.
From the street, how much the addition will be visible?
Approximately 10 feet. I think, I don't have the plan.
Perhaps, of course, if they have the plans in front of them. And you're going to be restoring the current existing building?
Yes.
Will it be restored in a fashion to be comparable and similar to the surrounding homes?
Yes.
Are the homes in the surrounding area the same type of houses currently as far as setbacks from the street approximately?
Yes.
Tell me about the driveway. The driveway currently is 11 foot wide.
That's what's existing. If the board wants it 10 feet, that's not a problem.
As far as the garage, that needs restoration also, doesn't it?
Some shoring up, yes.
And that'll house 2 cars?
Yes.
And with the plans as drawn, you can have a car parked to the right of the garage, correct?
Yes.
And
But I'm having trouble, you're speaking pretty quickly.
oh, I'm sorry, sir.
You park car to the right of the garage, is
Yes.
what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
2 in the garage, 1 to the right, and 1 either behind the 2-car garage.
When you say behind, you mean in front?
I'm in front, I'm sorry, in front, in front.
Mr. Molinaro, what type of tenants will you be seeking for this building when it's done? If the building's approved, what type of tenants would you be seeking to rent this property?
Single families, you know, commuting. You know, it's not gonna be college. We're not looking for any college rentals. It's a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom, so.
Part of the redevelopment plan calls for 10-foot buffer, the fencing and landscaping. Do you have room to do this in this property?
We don't have room for that.
Both sides and the rear?
Right.
What type of lighting do you plan to install in this house if it's approved?
Exterior lighting, yeah, doorways, entranceways,
What kind of landscaping is possible on this property?
There's not much room, there's some grass area in the back, a little on the left side. We got some foundation plantings putting in between the sidewalk and the existing foundation of the existing building.
There's a tree in the backyard. Will we be able to retain that tree?
We're gonna try. It's an ornamental tree we'd like to save, but I don't know if it's possible.
There's a slab, a concrete slab that you'd be breaking apart or working around for the addition, is that correct?
Yes.
There'll be some concrete left over. What do you intend to do with that?
It's part of the existing walkway between the two buildings, to the building to the right.
Will that go from the back of the house to the front of the house? And you plan on leaving that?
Yes.
Any other questions, board?
What are the variances you're requesting?
Yes, sir. Require minimum lot area variance, 10,000 required. The existing lot is 5974.
Okay, so 10,000 is required for a two-family. Is that what you're saying?
It's my understanding it's just required, period, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 family.
Okay.
It's got 3 families allowed in the zoning in this. Only asking for 2 family. That's an existing condition.
Okay.
Minimum lot frontage requires 100 feet, minimum lot frontage requires 100 feet, currently exists 50 feet. There's no change, but it requires a variance. The minimum front yard is 8 feet, 4 foot exists. We need a variance to that, but there's no change. Excuse me. There's also a minimum side yard of 10 feet, 4 foot currently exists, and there'll be no change on that. The planner raised the issue of parking, that we need a variance, because she only indicates 2 spaces, but I think we have 4 as exists. Or if the board wants, it could be modified, so where the parking is next to the garage, that could be widened, if that would be the board's preference. And the other issue would be, if you grant it, would be the 11 foot on the driveway.
What is the, being a little bit more formal, what is the reason that this variance should be granted? In other words, what land use reason?
It's conformed as far as density, coverage. It's permitted that way. It's a better project. It brings more people into town, more tax revenues. Obviously, it brings more money to my client, hopefully. Even though that's not a consideration that can be taken into account, it is a fact. It's a better project. Motivation for them to spend money by the town. And most of the homes, majority appears, or approximately a majority, are 2-family in the area. A lot of the lots are undersized. They're all undersized. If you look at the tax map, I think they vary 25 foot, 32, and 50, this is the largest lot in the area. And they're mostly 2 families. And we can have a planner with, we don't have a planner with to say, the negative and positive criteria, but he's just saying those words. I mean, it is what it is. They're looking to expand the building and come in the zone, is within the zone as far as density. The biggest thing is density and coverage. 70% coverage is allowed, it's only seeking 60%, it's currently 50. It's not a substantial change in coverage. Going from 50 to 60% of coverage.
What's the width of the driveway?
Currently 11, I believe.
As proposed, the same?
I believe so. Last minute plan ratio should be 10 feet.
Mr. Chairman, if Mr. Skolnick's going to be providing testimony, I think he would have to be sworn in, and whether or not the testimony he's providing is professional testimony, it's something the board will have to consider.
Mr. Skolnick, would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm the testimony you'll give and have given here this evening is the whole truth?
Yes, I do, sir.
You're an attorney, sir?
Yes, I am, sir.
Do you hold any other licenses from the state of New Jersey?
No, sir. Other than a driver's license.
But not as a planner
No, not at all.
or an engineer or an architect?
No, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
We have significant planning comments that frankly, I think cannot be answered by an attorney. I believe that they have an architect that prepared the plans, and I would recommend that they bring that architect in to answer a number of questions we have regarding also how they're going to meet the design standards of the redevelopment plan. That's just one of many of our questions.
I have a question. Do you own the property across the street where it says Anthony's Landscaping?
Yes.
And the garage to the left of it?
Yes.
Okay. When I drove by the property, I noticed that this had significantly more space than most of the other lots. But if there's going to be no change of the existing structure, I would be concerned that I would really like to see it cleaned up extensively. And I guess just kind of looking at this garage across the street, how it needs repair on the top, I would just want to make sure that we didn't see that on the original structure as part of it. And I know this is a very premature comment, but it's fresh, so I'm just making it.
But that's, I don't believe that's the lot in question. That's not in question.
No,
right?
it's not, but I'm just,
That's
we're-
after Sandy, the siding fell off. We didn't get a chance
Oh,
to.
no, I know, because it's all over the place,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying, like, I would want to see this cleaned up to make the exception, and then I'm just noting my comment that it does look substantially larger than, much more spacious than the rest of the street.
Well, it's a double lot.
Yeah.
Across the street.
So I'm just affirming what I've heard.
Do you have any, can you give us any insight into this concept of building a second house behind the first house, given that you have a double lot here?
No, that's not a double lot.
Well, given the
That's
width
the
you, okay, so I'll stop editorializing and just ask the question. Can you talk about the decision to build effectively a second house behind the first house?
Well, it was one way for us to turn it into two-family feasible, economically. I didn't want to go for the expense of making it a three-family, which it is zoned for.
Right.
And it was easy enough just to add that back section.
But it does create some, the idea of having someone living behind does impact, I would assume, a number of things. I mean, one is you have a streetscape that's about houses right on the street, and on that street they're very close.
Right.
Now you have a house behind. I guess that's one of the reasons for the lighting question. I mean, I know this was something you brought up in the planning memo, and I do think it's an interesting idea, but it raises a set of questions about how it will work on that street and it's not as if there are not, there's enough space here that there are other options of what to do. So I don't know that the site constrains you to this solution.
I have a question. Well, actually, was that a question for Mr. Molinaro?
It was, and I got an answer, so I apologize.
I have a question for Ms. Gould. So I understand they're listing on your review here, it says R22 bulk standards, minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet, and the existing is 5974. But you're saying that the lot is undersized, the density of the proposed development is less than what is permitted because it's in the redevelopment zone. Is that R22?
Yes, that's correct.
So actually, you're saying the density is less than what is permitted. So does that require 3 residential units at a minimum? I'm not,
Now, generally speaking, what the purpose of that redevelopment plan was to consolidate lots and to have larger lots that generally can accommodate greater density than smaller lots.
Right, which is what was done on the block across.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly.
So that's why there are 2 standards. But the standard for minimum lot area, if you had 10,000 square feet, you generally can accommodate more density. But they are compliant, and they are less than what the density is in the R22 zone in the redevelopment area.
Based on the R22 zone, you're allowed 22 units per acre.
Right.
Based
So
on the
they
size
could
of this property, they could have 3
technically-
units.
Technically have 3 units.
oh, because it's meant to be like apartments.
Yeah.
That
Is this the same
generally-
zone as the development that you can see in their backyard? There's
No.
Yes, well, it's across the river. whatever
No,
it's called.
Oh, that's a different
zone.
That's a
Different
different
redevelopment.
zone.
Different zone.
That's, yeah.
Are we working from plans? I don't see the signature block. I don't know what they are. It's showing a proposed 37-foot set,
I believe the designer was referring to the addition.
Pardon me?
I actually questioned him on that. That's the addition, the setback.
Okay, so that the proposed setback is what? The actual proposed setback?
It doesn't change. It currently exists.
Okay, so it's 4 feet?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, now, so this is in the redevelopment zone, but in fact, there's no apartment buildings on that street. They're all houses.
No. There are other areas in the Church Street area that have been redeveloped for multifamily.
On the north side of
The north side of
Yeah.
Third Street.
On the
Big
north side.
development.
But this is on the other side of the river from the big apartment complex.
Yeah.
That's a different redevelopment area. This is the Church Street redevelopment area that is goes from South Orange Avenue to the end of the street. There are 2 districts in that, sub-districts. One is R22, one is R33.
There's 3 districts. There's
There
a
are
32, a 38, and
I'm
the
sorry,
22.
That's right.
Is the community garden in the back of this? Is that anywhere?
Yes. Yeah, the community garden is right across the river from the back of this
Right.
property.
Right. Okay. So, Ms. Gruhl, you would like to hear an architect talk about what items in particular on your planning comments?
All of it. Frankly, I don't know how anybody testifies on plans unless they've drawn them up for opinions. Obviously, the applicant can testify on what he's proposing, but
What does the rest of the board think? We're the ones that need to decide.
I'm also looking at that same zoning information. It says 3 parking spaces provided, or only 2 are required. And in our planner's report, I don't know, what do you do with 3.4 spaces? What does that mean? Are there 4 required?
It's
or
4.
4.
It's
So I don't,
averaged up.
where did you get the,
Two in the garage, one to the right of the garage, and one in front of the garage. It's 4.
oh, okay, I thought you were saying you're providing 3 spaces on your plans.
Well, they've got 3 spaces, but then I guess according to our ordinances, as long as it's in the back of the property, you can park it anywhere. And they would park it in front of one garage space.
But if the board would approve the project and would prefer that the area to the right of the garage was widened to allow 2 cars there, that would be fine by the applicant also.
You basically put 4 cars, right, 2 in the garage and 2 right
Correct.
alongside the garage.
If that was the board's preference, that would be fine.
That would actually provide a turnaround for, which there isn't now.
I think this may not look like a complex application, but I think that we have set a precedence at this board to always hear from a planner and an architect. And I think this project lends itself to hearing from both persons.
Do you have any particular concerns? You agree with these various planning comments?
I just think it's my concern is that what would happen is it's going to be a building to the front and somebody's going to slap a building in the back and make it work, and I don't think that I'm comfortable in allowing that to happen.
I'm sure I understood you, Mr. Sibley. You said, why don't you?
I just don't understand how everything is going to come together nicely. That's just my concern.
We have other questions or for the applicant?
No, I'm just finishing looking at the plan.
I would like to hear from maybe an architect on whether there is no room for any kind of buffer, landscape buffer. I'd like to hear from an architect whether there in fact is no room for any landscape buffer.
I believe my client can answer that. That's his professional landscape. Do you want to hear from Mr. Molinaro on that issue?
I think the buffer they required was a fence and then a 10-foot planting bed. The ordinance, that's what the planner has planned. There's really no room for that.
Is there room for anything?
Well, we put some plantings in the front of the building, in front of the property, to the left of the driveway, to block the view going down. There's an ornamental tree there. Other than that, we got some plantings between the driveway and the existing building. And after that, there's not much room.
I don't particularly have more questions. I think I'd like to discuss this and particularly hear from our planner.
You'd like to hear from a planner?
Yeah, or from our planner. I mean, you mentioned you had more questions. I just think this isn't, I'm ready to move to a discussion. I don't think I have more questions of the applicant right now.
Should we go through each item?
That's what I haven't heard. Frankly, I haven't heard any testimony, and testimony has got to be given by a professional pretty much, or the applicant where appropriate. And I don't know how some of these questions are going to be answered without that. But that's up to the board to determine that.
I agree with you. Yeah,
Mr. Molinaro, I'm trying to sense where the board is at. I don't think you're going to get your approval tonight. I think we're asking, you could demand one from us, which in your case would probably not be a good idea, because if we had to vote right now, we'd probably just say, we don't know yet. People are silent here because we're kind of flummoxed with this. This is a very unusual application, and we'd like to hear some professional testimony. I think we should adjourn, frankly, and you come back with some preparation for how to address these planning comments here. Am I summarizing the sentiment of the board properly?
I would recommend the architect be available as well. And just so you know up front, I have questions regarding just egress from the building. It looks to me like there's only one door
From
in and
each
out of each unit.
There's a back door. I think there's a back door for the back unit from the basement.
Okay, at grade.
I see the rear building, it appears to have
The rear
stairs
building.
going to each, yeah.
Yeah, but the front building, I don't see another means of egress, and I don't think there's a common area between the two units. They're completely separate, right? Yeah.
Right.
So,
It's not a common area.
I would just, have the architect take a look at that and make sure, from a code standpoint, whether or not there's going to be a need for another means of egress from that existing building, and in which case, for instance, if it has to go out where the jog is in the back of the building, whether or not there's going to need to be steps or something there, for them to get down. That's the initial concern that I see regarding that. So I think it would be beneficial for the architect to be available, and if the architect's also a planner, maybe they can address some of the planning concerns and issues.
Okay, so what would you prefer to do?
Carries next meeting.
That's a wise decision. Okay, so then you bring a planner and an architect, and you're first on board for the next meeting. Then we don't have any completeness, so we've done the completeness. So this is the one in progress. So you all would be first for the May meeting. The May meeting, and go from there. Is there anything else that we can do to make it clear that what they need to do besides just bring the architect and the planner?
Respond to her letter.
Yeah, I think there's key issues in here that we would have difficulty overcoming without testimony on, like, what are they gonna do with the existing structure to accomplish the beautification, right?
You're going to need to address point by point the planner's comments and questions, because those are ours at this point. We've adopted those and say those are legitimate questions. You need to address those.
Did you know the top of the next meeting date? What date is it? May?
It's the first Tuesday in May.
I think it's the third.
7th, I believe.
Since you have the time, you might want to respond to the planner's letter in writing to the planner so that she can give you feedback in advance of the meeting.
Well, is that
What are
something?
some of the issues? I'm just curious.
They're all written down in the memo. Comments. They're comments or questions, clarifications.
All right.
Now, is that actually something that we really want to written comments to you beforehand? Is that?
That's up to what you would like.
It's up to them. I just made a suggestion.
It's up to you all to do that. You don't have to. You can just have the architect and planner come here, but it might be useful to have the architect respond to some of these written so we could review them and be more prepared beforehand. Because you're seeing here, Mr. Molinaro, a bunch of board members just stuck. And stuck is not going to get you an approval.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will carry this to May 7th. They will be the first application on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
guys.
Good night.
Okay, good
Thank you.
night. Okay, so we do have, if y'all can hang out, can we discuss the Historic Preservation Commission for just a couple minutes? We need to kind of get a sense of what's going to be expected of us. My understanding is that, like Mr. Rinda said, that if it's a registered property, if we deem it an application complete and it's in that zone as a registered property, we're then obligated to send it to the Historic Preservation Commission for their comments.
I believe it's only if there is a need for a certificate of appropriateness that the board is required to send it to the HPC. And
So it's a criteria for determining that.
No, there are very specific standards, excuse me, they're very, I think, and Pat, please, we've gone through this a lot, I think it's pretty clear when a certificate of appropriateness is required. But the board has, in that ordinance, the HPC has an advisory role to both the planning board and the zoning board on applications that are either in a district or identified as a historic site. Pat, how would you define whether it has to, it's the board's option as to whether they want to? There's some...
Whether they need to, they don't need, if the certificate of appropriateness is entirely up to the HPC whether or not they issue it. The board just takes into account whatever comments they may have, similar to what, for example, the Environmental Commission might have on an application. Advisory role to give the board some more information about the property. If the ordinance triggers a certificate of appropriateness, that's something the HPC grants or doesn't grant.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
So what's a certificate of appropriateness mean to, is that still advisory? They say, okay, it's not appropriate to grant this variance because you're destroying the historic nature of a certain property.
You actually, under the rules, which is not unusual if you have a Historic Preservation Commission and ordinance, that you are, if the HPC denies a certificate of appropriateness, the appeal comes to this board. That's where you get involved in a certificate of appropriateness, potentially.
So if they deny, then the
they can
application is
appeal.
denied, and the appeal is to us to...
Are you saying that regardless of whether a variance is required, we would hear it?
Correct. On a certificate of appropriateness. That's a different issue. It's a totally different level of review. It is a historic
It's a design
review.
not a-
But that is the standard that I've seen this in other municipalities. It's not uncommon that any appeal would go from a certificate of appropriateness would come to the zoning board. But that's a different responsibility than just as an advice. Now that they have power to grant that certificate of appropriateness. What we were talking about is your general applications are, as Pat said, it's no different than an advisory opinion from any of your boards like the Environmental Commission. So if they want and you want them to give you advice from a historic perspective, then they have the ability to do that and the option.
And we have the ability to use that as a reason for denial of an application.
As advisory.
Well, to the extent that the master plan and the HPC have set both policy and ordinance regulations about whether or not you can consider, for example, in denying a variance or granting a variance, you can always turn to those and say whether or not it substantially impairs intent, purpose of the zone plan and ordinance, the negative criteria. The HPC believes it did causes a significant impairment, then the board can rely on that and grant or not grant a variance. Yes.
Okay.
Most of the enforcement, what does the HPC do? Well, in subdivision demolitions, it has the right to require whether or not a certificate of appropriateness is issued. And it doesn't mean that the person can't necessarily do what they want, but they have to go through this process. There's an appeal if the board, HPC turns them down. And in the case of demolition, there's also a time period where they have to try to sell the property before they can demolish, if the HPC says it ought to be preserved. It can't prevent them eventually from doing that, but it can require them to go through this process. There's a 12-month waiting period. They have to try to sell it.
And the certificate of appropriateness is only for subdivisions
Subdivision
and demolition.
Which there happens to be one
I'm sorry?
going in front of them soon, right?
I believe so.
Okay, so is this ordinance online at this point?
It probably is listed online because it was adopted a few months ago, so it's
Jetta,
probably...
do you have a copy anywhere of this ordinance? Can you scan and...
There's two pieces to the ordinance. There's the piece of the ordinance that describes the duties of the HPC, and then there's the ordinance that specifies the specific properties that are listed. And they're listed by address, and then they're listed by the zones, the historic districts as well. So, and I guess it's my understanding that any subdivision or demolition proposed in either of those districts would require, I mean, the way the ordinance is written, it's a little bit unclear.
Let me take a meta view here.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm going to say?
No, but I think it's a good idea to get a little higher in the air.
Yeah, my meta view, do you want to finish what I'm saying? No, okay. I'll go ahead. I'm giving you grief tonight, Michael. It's getting late. I'm getting loopy. We don't have the ordinance in front of us. None of us do. Here's what I'm noticing. That's my meta... Oh, Bob.
Either Jetta or you or Sal or Susan sent it out to us.
Yes, and that's what I was going to suggest, is Jetta, you send it out to us so we can take a look at it and we can have some more informed questions and opinions. We need to read it ourselves is what we need to do. We need to educate ourselves because we're kind of talking around here, guessing, trying to recall from memory. So I think that's what we should do. Is that...
It probably wouldn't be bad to know what the questions to us are. I mean, what are we being asked here? So
we don't even know at this point, but it's something that we need to know. It's an encumbrance upon us, and we need to know it. You know, it's something that the town took seriously enough. Was years in the making, and it may impact us. So we need to spend a little time reading it. So Jetta, can you scan those two parts and email it to us? Thank you. Okay. Michael, was there others? That was it? That's good. Okay.
That's a good meta view.
Okay. All right. And any other questions before we adjourn? Okay, thank you all. This was a busy but productive evening. I'll see you all next month.